Welcome to SteeleWatching, which is a podcast for Remington Steele fans. My name is Sara, and I am full of shortbread and not sure what day it is. I mean, one of the hosts.
Yes, and I'm Eric, and I'm the other host, and I'm not full of it. I mean, maybe I am.
I was going to say, wait, what? No. Yeah, so Happy New Year. I mean, obviously, by the time you hear this, we will be well into 2024, but for us who are back in time,
yes,
something like that, it is newly 2024. So yeah, Happy New Year. And we just wanted to start out before we get into the episode talking about, we have a couple of things. Firstly, we have 2 new subscribers, so we just wanted to give a shout out because it's this is not something we make money from, obviously. And any help, support, anything that's given goes to helping us get this made and out to you guys. So we're really, really, really appreciative of it whenever anybody decides to support us. So thank you so very, very much. You know who you are.
Yes. We appreciate our supporters. Well,
we love you.
Okay. Well, there is an issue. There is an issue.
I gotta know about this. I can't wait.
There is an issue.
This is my Christmas present right here.
Okay. Well, in the Facebook group, it's one of those, how did we get here from there situations? Somebody posted something about Stephanie Zimbalist wearing her watch on her left wrist, and conversation ensued. And I made a comment about the observation, and I made a reference to my being older than, let's say, the majority of members of the group, and how that might have colored or influenced my perception and understanding of which wrist people wear their watch on.
Oh, wait, there was a debate about this and I missed it?
Yes.
Okay, and, what were the 2 sides? Help me out here, because I might be in the wrong on this too, and I think I really need to know.
Well, I think I'm trying to remember all the details. I'm trying to blank it out of my mind because of what happened. But
too late.
It comes down to, do people generally wear their watch on their strong wrist, or their dominant, or their non-dominant wrist? And
I always wore mine on my dominant hand.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was saying, but although I was saying it in the context of mechanical watches and most people being right-handed, so most people wore it on their right wrist because that's the way mechanical watches were designed, so that you could access the stem to wind it. And
makes sense.
Never. This is life advice for everybody.
Were you wrong? Did you get that wrong?
No. It wasn't that I was wrong. It's just never ever jokingly say, "You want to bet?"
Okay.
Because
I'm listening.
when I referenced my age, somebody made a comment about, it was really kind of about their age, but in the context of their parents' age.
Uh-huh.
And I'm going to claim that I was set up.
Sure.
Because, hey, people who listen to the podcast know that I'm not a social media person. And on Facebook, when you're, in the groups and you're posting and other people are posting and commenting and such, there's a little profile picture, but it's very small. You don't get a lot of visual information about it. So you can't necessarily get a lot of visual cues about the person who's posted this, that, or the other thing. And I'm not the kind of person who goes and stalks a person's profiles. Oh, how old are they? Well, where do they live? What is their education?
I see where this is going.
And like I said, never jokingly comment about, you want to bet on that. And I bet that I was older than this person's parents, because from what I could tell, they were probably a younger person. And you know how young people are. Anybody over 40 is old.
Hey.
And I figured I was on safe ground.
Ouch.
I figured I was on safe ground. Well, I figured I was pretty safe ground. And the deeper we got into it, the more I started panicking that maybe I kind of, anyway, the bet ended up being that if I was older than this person's parents, they would buy some merch from our store. And if they were older than I was, I would sing.
How old are
this
you?
Episode. I am 64 as of October of 2023. So
you are not even older than my parents. So yeah, you need to start singing,
up.
my friend.
Shut up. So I have to sing. However, the good news.
What are we saying?
We're not going to do it until after the end of the episode. So
they have to listen to the whole thing.
They have to listen to the episode. Well, no, this is not to trick people into listening to the whole episode. This is to give them the opportunity to get out and abandon the episode after we do our regular closing. And this will be like, you know, in the movies where they do the titles at the end and they have all the bloopers and such.
Yeah.
And only the people who stay see those. Well, this is what that's going to be.
Stay for the credits, people. This is the end credit. This is the sequence after the credits that everybody that goes to a Marvel movie waits for. So now you know that it's extra special, and you should all stay till the end of the credits.
Yes,
and
in the spirit of Brosnan and Remington being Irish, and the fact that I, for whatever reason, have this thing about Ireland and Irish things. I am going to butcher a Bing Crosby song. Too low, baby. Now you got me so flustered I can't even say it. Let's get on with this. Enough of this nonsense.
Can I ask one question though? Afterwards, can I use the button on the Roadcaster thingy that goes applause? After? Can I use the applause sound effect? I might actually. I think I do. I have a trombone. I have a sad trombone I could use.
That would probably be more appropriate. Yes.
We have sound effects now. Everybody, just saying that we have.
This is just a fair warning to everybody. You know, when you hear us say goodbye, just turn it off. Don't listen to the rest, except for that one person who set me up. And I'm gonna swear that I was set up. Sure. Oh, anyway. All right. Hey, enough about me. All right.
All right.
Start doing your job. Be the host.
Ouch. Okay, old man. No, who is not even old enough to be my parents, just saying. Today we're going to be talking about the season 2, episode 13, Blood is Thicker Than Steel. And speaking of parenting, this episode is basically a how-to manual on how not to parent your children. Ouch.
Yeah.
There's some stuff I'm going to get into here. The episode first aired January 31st, 1984, and it was written by Richard DeRoy, and we have a woman who directed this one, Barbara Peters.
Did you read the notes in Judith's Moose? Well, I'll get to that after you read the summary.
I didn't. Oh, what did it say? Because I must have skimmed.
Okay.
I've read the book. I just don't remember because I wasn't looking for it.
Okay. Well, I just when you were looking for the TV Guide summary and the others, I thought you might have noticed it. There's a note there for this episode. This episode specifically that says that when the network complained about the show being over its per episode budget, Stephanie Zimbalist jokingly suggested that she and Pierce film the entire episode sitting on stools in the studio, just telling the viewing audience what would have happened so the producers wouldn't have to spend money on sets, props, guest actors, and locations. And to me, that sounds like a moonlighting episode.
Yeah, no, but Stephanie, get down with your bad self. Like that's a baller move. Good for her. Like,
yes.
Well, how would you rather have us just sit there? No? Okay, then shut up. That's great.
but like I say, it sounds like something they did on Moonlighting. But anyway,
it does. But
because they actually, I think they did have some episodes that were kind of along those same lines. I mean, not that extreme, but they were, yes, definitely.
I can totally see how season 2 went over budget, considering the first 2 episodes alone.
Yeah.
Right? Like but it's funny because it's not really their fault. They're just the actors, but like, it's good for her to stand up and just say like, hey, no, if you want us just sitting on a stool, we can do that too. Like, that's great.
So, anyway, on to the summary.
I did go with the TV Guide synopsis because I looked at the other 2 and they were really long and really wordy, and I felt like the TV Guide summed it up pretty well, which it says, Laura and Steele must protect 2 precocious children from the kidnappers who want to keep their father from testifying in a federal investigation. Short, to the point, pretty much just sums it up. So, thought that was good. However, I maintain the episode synopsis should read, here's mine, Laura and Steele must protect the 2 most annoying children on the face of the earth. And honestly, they should have just let their... No, okay, I'm going to stop there. But yeah, also...
They should have just opened the door on that RV and shoved them out.
Shoved them out the way. I would have given the kids to the kidnappers, because here's the thing. After about 10 minutes, the kidnappers would have given the kids back. Case closed.
There is a book. There is a book by Donald E. Westlake, and I can't remember the name of it, but there is a book by Donald E. Westlake where basically that's the plot of the novel.
Like the kids would have just been so irritating. The kidnappers would have been like, you know what? It's not worth it. Great Kirk can just go to jail. Like, here, have him back. Because like, yeesh. You know how there's that rule in Hollywood: never work with dogs or children. I feel like they should have taken that advice here, and they might have done better with a golden retriever. But anyway, in all seriousness, there is kind of a serious thing.
Jimmy the Kid, Donald E. Westlake. If that is literally the plot of that book, yes. So yeah.
In all seriousness, though, it is worth noting that Bridget Anderson, who plays Angel, died in 1997 at the age of 21 from an opioid overdose, which is pretty sad. I remember reading that somewhere, and I thought I'd look it up. So, yeah, I don't know why I felt like mentioning that, but...
Yeah, anyway. I noticed that too. So,
but that has nothing to do with how annoying her character is. She wasn't responsible for that, so
that's
we'll
true.
Forgive her. So it opens outside the Century City Towers. Steele, Laura, and Mildred are leaving. I'm assuming like after the day is done. Surprisingly, during the daytime, which is unusual since sometimes we see them there at like 11 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
But they say goodbye to Mildred, and just as they do, a black car pulls up, and a man grabs Mildred and shoves her into the car. She screams.
I have a question. Didn't they give Mildred the Auburn?
What, to forever?
Well, I mean, that was kind of like her primary car for driving. They were using the Rabbit, weren't they? Maybe I'm remembering that wrong.
No, I think it was that Rolls Royce or whatever that she bought, the other car. Or has she not done that yet?
No, they did that.
Okay. Yeah, no, I don't think they gave it to her. I think she's like she drives it sometimes.
Give it to her, but like that was her primary car to drive.
Because like they all drive each other's cars.
Well, that's true.
I think that's his car. I'm pretty sure that's his car specifically, but like she drives it and Laura drives. He drives the Rabbit. They don't seem terrible. I wonder if they're all on each other's insurance. It's my theory. Like they're just all on there as secondary drivers.
Yes,
and Laura's insurance is through the roof, given how many times the Rabbit's been stolen.
Yeah. Well, given that they're following, jumping ahead here a few seconds, Mildred gets kidnapped by these folks and they start pursuing it. This is where Laura's mad driving skills actually come in handy, although I have questions about her shortcut.
Yeah, no kidding. Right? No, I agree with you there, but like it's funny because when you think about their insurance rates, Laura's would be through the roof given how many times it's been busted or stolen, but Steele's, his is a classic car. That thing's going to be...
It's going to be through the roof
expensive to insure. Yeah. So they must be paying a premium on those. But so they give chase. And as they chase through the streets, the car turns one way. Laura tells Steele to turn the another way saying it is a shortcut, according to her. She claims there are advantages to growing up in LA. It is sort of a shortcut, but they have to stop for some kids crossing the street.
Well, my question is, how is going the opposite way from the direction your quarry is going being a shortcut?
I don't know.
I mean, unless the road that the bad guys turned on is a giant loop and comes back around, I don't see that. I don't see it working. I don't see it working.
Yeah,
maybe somebody who lives in LA will recognize that location and be able to tell us. I don't know.
Maybe it was a weird decision writing wise too, because if they wanted to have them come up against these kids crossing the street that slows them down, they could have just done that.
Yeah.
Without
have the bad guys be far enough ahead that they got past the sidewalk or the crosswalk, and then Laura and Steele are coming up to it as the kids begin crossing. So yeah, I mean, it could still have been done.
Yeah.
But anyway,
so
what do I know?
So they have to wait for these kids crossing the street. As they're waiting, Laura wonders who they are, what they want with Mildred. And once they're clear, they resume chasing the car, which drives into a gated mansion. So they screech to a stop outside the mansion. As you said, she's driving her usual exuberant way of driving.
Teaching that road a lesson.
Yeah, exactly. They pull Mildred out of the car. She tells them to wait until my boss gets his hands on you, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Steele and Laura, meanwhile, they get stopped at the gate. Laura assumes it's wired, so Steele opts to go through the service entrance while she slams her palm into it to set the alarm off.
Mm-hmm.
Mildred hears it as they're tying her to a chair and says, "Now you're really in trouble," which I kind of enjoy. And then one of the henchmen goes off to deal with them while Mildred tells the other, "This is kidnapping. This will get you 15, possibly 20 years, crowded cells, starchy foods," which I really like. Mildred kind of like telling this guy off.
Yeah.
And then he says, "You remind me of my mother," which she thinks is a good thing until he says he hates his mother.
I'm going to say anytime somebody says that you remind them of a parent, that's probably not a good thing.
Unless the parent is dead and they're beloved, you're probably not getting a compliment.
No.
So, yeah, and given the theme of this episode is, difficult parents and difficulty with parenting, it kind of starts us off on that foot almost right away because he turns around and gags her. We then see Laura climbing down the gate as the other henchman gets there. He grabs her, calls her an amateur, and as he comes, he's got his gun on her as they come in. The other henchman is heading out to help. Steele pops up from behind him and knocks him out, and Laura uses that as her moment, which obviously they had sort of pre-planned this in some capacity, or they just know each other's behaviors well enough to know what the other person's going to do, because the first guy is distracted, she gets his gun, and now they have the advantage.
Yeah, I'm going to say it's just them working together on instinct.
Yeah, that's kind of what I figured, because he says he's going around the service entrance. She doesn't follow him, so they probably both assumed that they were just going to take different routes, and one of them would get where they needed to be, essentially. Yeah. So now they've got the advantage. He says they're looking for Mildred Krebs. As he does so, the lights go on, and the man at the top of the stairs says they live up to their reputation. Steele is confused, and the man says that he heard they were the best, but he had to be sure. And so that's when Laura figures out this is some sort of test. And he says it's a critical one. So here's my question.
Mm-hmm.
Was that poor henchman that just got knocked out aware it was a test? Or the other one? For all these henchmen know, Laura and, they could have killed, was Gallon willing to let them possibly kill Laura and Steele? What did they think they were going to do with Mildred? Were they aware of what was going on?
There is a compromise there. There is a compromise there. There is the compromise of the bad guys not knowing it was a test, but being given instructions, don't do any major physical harm. Just kidnap, bring them here.
But then that poor sucker got knocked out for nothing.
Yeah, well,
I feel bad for that
he's probably
henchman.
getting paid pretty well.
Yeah, I suppose.
If there's enough money in it, it could be worth it, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, so here's another question, because this comes up later on with Mr. Jackson and Mr. Ross. Is this the same two guys? You know how later he teaches Mr. Jackson a lesson by
Yes,
making an example of poor Mr. Ross. Are these two men here, Mr. Jackson and Mr. Ross?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, so they're pretty loyal to Gallon then, because we kind of find that out later on.
Yes.
Okay.
Some are more loyal than others, but yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's only so much loyalty I would have for my employer in those circumstances, but that kind of makes more sense then, that they're willing to take their lumps, quite literally.
Yes.
So yeah, Steele isn't sure who this guy is, but Laura immediately recognizes him as somebody named Mr. Gallon. Says that he's one of their more famous expatriates. And she says, I thought you were living among the sheltering palms. He tells her that the government has offered to let him come home if he testifies against his former associates at the company called the Greykirk Corporation. Now, we get no information about Greykirk. We don't know what it is they do. We don't know, aside from being like your prototypical James Bond villains here with the colored phones and the whatever else, like what company, like what was this company known for? What do they do? Any guesses? Because like we don't ever find out.
Yeah, no, it's just they're there. They're the bad guy for the purpose of giving us a plot.
Cool. All right. So it's just so funny because we have no information whatsoever about this company. We have no information about Mr. Gallon, really, other than he worked for them. Obviously, he was driven out of the country as a result, and now he's coming back. Do we have any idea how long he's been gone?
I don't think we get any hint.
So we get a lot of information in this episode, is what you're telling me.
Yeah, a lot of empty information. That kind of relates to a question I had, because jumping ahead just a little bit, he comments that he's got 2 children living in this house, and that information that we get seems a little bit contradictory to what comes up later, because at the end, Chris makes a comment about now that we're going to be living in LA, but here he says the children are living in the house, and he's been out of the country amongst the sheltering palms. It makes it sound like the kids have been there and he hasn't been, because, if he had just gotten back, which is what he says, he just gotten back. I mean, it's kind of like living at a hotel. You don't say you're living at a hotel if you're there for like a week or so. You're just staying there. You're only living there if it's long term. And it just the wording is confusing to me.
It is confusing because if he's testifying in Arizona, whatever crimes that were committed theoretically were committed there, correct?
Well, no, it's a federal courthouse, so it's.
They don't have any federal courthouses in LA, or no?
Well, that was kind of another question. They do. They have federal courthouses in California. It could be that whatever federal case is going on was centered around. The business could have been based in Arizona, for example.
Okay.
And that would maybe cause them to bring the case to court in Arizona as opposed to some other place. But yeah, it is kind of a weird, because typically most major corporations are centered around, Los Angeles or New York or something like that.
And if he keeps a house
Tucson,
there, you'd think that he would. I think they said Phoenix, though, did they not?
Was it Phoenix?
I'm pretty sure they said Phoenix.
It could have been.
I think it was Phoenix. But either way, like it seems odd that they would have a house in LA. And the other thing is, was Shelby Haynes raising these children?
That's part of my question about where were the kids while he was out of the country? Were they actually with him or with her here in the house in Los Angeles? Because everything in the first half of this episode kind of gives that impression, oh, you're back and now you're taking and then you're taking off right away again, even after you've just come back, and you're taking the kids with you. It all kind of melds together to kind of give the impression that the kids had been staying there under her care while he was out of the country. I don't know.
Well, that, and she's like deeply in love with him and wants to play happy families, with all of them together. But yeah, like I did get that impression that the kids had been there all along, that he was the one who had been absent because he had to flee, right? So that's kind of what I thought. But okay, so it's good to know we're on the same page, even if the script isn't.
Yeah. Even if that page is confusion.
It's very confusing. Yeah, because I got that impression too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, he says that he gets to come home if he testifies. Steele asks what he wants from them, and Gallon urges them both to have a drink. And then Steele says, "We don't drink without Miss Krebs," to which he apologizes for his manners, instructing his henchmen to go and get Mildred.
Why do I believe that he really doesn't have manners to have gotten rusty?
Yeah, I that's a good point.
He doesn't seem like the most cordial guy naturally.
Well, I mean, it's not exactly the best way to introduce yourself either. Like, we're going to kidnap your secretary, and by the way, I want to employ you. Like, I get that he wanted to do a test, but why not actually contact them ahead of time and say, we're going to set up this mock kidnapping, and you need to get around me in order to show me that you're, whatever.
Yeah,
At least then poor Mildred wouldn't be left to think she was going to be killed or ransomed. So, nobody seems to care what Mildred had to go through in order for this to happen.
No.
So, but you're right. Like he goes on to say he has 2 children in the house. That implies they've been living there, and that they mean the world to him, which, okay, I'm going to maybe push back on that a little bit. Like, do they though? Because you haven't parented them at all. So, okay.
And when he does, and what we see of his parenting technique leaves a lot to be desired.
So much to be desired. Yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah. He says you don't get to be as powerful as the Grey-Kirk Corporation by playing by the rules. Apparently, you don't get to be as powerful as the Grey-Kirk Corporation by having an actual business either. So,
well, there's a lot of people that got really powerful and rich by not really having a business.
Totally fair. most of them in politics. So I guess.
Yeah, well, that or pyramids.
Yeah. Sign up and then just get 10 more people to sign up, and they need to get 10 more people to sign up, and it's totally a business.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So Laura immediately ascertains that he believes Grey-Kirk is going to attempt to kidnap his children in order to prevent him from testifying. He says that up until this point, the kids have been safe, but his being in the U.S. changes things. So again, that implies the kids have been there, and that they've been safe because he's been gone. Right? Yep. And that he says he's not going to testify unless his children, Chris and Angel, are safe. Did you catch the names of the 2 kids? Chris and Angel?
Yeah. Yes, I did.
Did this make you think of the same thing it made me think of?
The magician, yes.
Yes! Okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to yell, but I was like, wait a minute, Chris Angel, the illusionist. Obviously, he came after this, but I would love to know. Like,
if
I know it's
took
such an
name
obscure
from the show.
Yes, I know it's so obscure that probably the answer is no, but it's also just anyway. So for those of you who don't know, there was an illusionist out there named Chris Angel. That's not his actual name. His actual name is Greek. Christopher Nicholas, and I'm going to butcher this, so I apologize if anybody from Greece is listening. Sarantakos, is that how you pronounce it?
That's what I'm going to say.
So known professionally as Chris Angel, who's an American magician, illusionist, and musician, often referred to as one of the world's most successful illusionists, generating in excess of $150 million in tourism revenue for Las Vegas in 1 year. He started in New York, known for starring in the hit television show Mind Freak and the stage show Chris Angel Mind Freak Live. He's done so much. He holds multiple world records. And he was given all kinds of awards, like greatest of all time and things like that. So I don't know. It just kind of seemed funny that they were named Chris and Angel, and there's this famous magician named Chris Angel. Anyway.
And he was born in 1967. So at the time this episode came out, he would have been in his later mid-teens or mid-later teens.
Yeah, so, maybe he's
17, 18. So, I mean, it's entirely possible that he saw the show. It would be really bizarre if he picked the name from that combination of characters, but
Chris Angel, if you're listening, Please tell us. I doubt he is, but hey.
Yes, I doubt he is either.
Who knows?
Yes.
So yeah, he tells them that all they have to do is take his kids on a little trip. Steele does not look happy about this and asks how little. Laura tells him that Mr. Steele loves children in that really, really fake voice. Yeah. Well, actually, no, I would argue that he does actually genuinely enjoy children, just not these ones. Because we see...
Who would?
Yeah, fair. But we see later on when he's playing with Francis and Donald's kids, and he seems to be having a great time in like a later episode. So I maintain that... And here's the thing. I'm going to say something that's going to sound really terrible.
Okay.
I don't like small children that aren't mine. No, I don't. I really don't. Like, teenagers are fine.
Have you told this to your daughter?
No, that aren't mine. I don't like small children that aren't mine.
Well, you didn't say that.
I did say that. It's in the recording. But no, I teach teenagers for a reason. I don't like small kids. I don't like other people's small kids. I don't relate well to small kids. Like, I don't know how to talk to them. I know how to talk to my kid because she's my kid, but like somebody else like brings me their children and I'm like Laura, fake treacly tones and not really knowing like how to deal with them, right? So like
it's real simple. Sit down and shut up.
Yeah, that's Steele's method. So like not wanting to take somebody else's kids on a road trip,
oh yeah,
I feel is
absolutely
valid, right? Like I feel like that's perfectly valid. We've seen him enjoy children. He just doesn't enjoy these children, and presumably if he had his own kids, he wouldn't dislike them. It's just these kids are not his kids, and they're also little a-holes. So sorry, family show. They're little jerks.
Yeah. I was going to say something about liking your own kids. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love my kids. Far away, I love them. The closer they get to me, I mean, I still love them, but I just don't like them as much.
Eric's kids, if you're listening.
Fortunately, they don't. So I'm safe.
But yeah, Laura's Mr. Steele loves children is a little bit of a presumption, just given that I don't think anybody necessarily...
It's not a presumption. Oh, it's not a presumption. No. This is something has happened, and this is her getting back at him for something.
Yeah,
I don't know
maybe.
what's happened. We don't have anything in the script that says, but this is not. No, This is payback for something.
Yeah. So Gallon says that he has to testify a day after tomorrow in Phoenix. It's in my notes. So, and if they can deliver.
Fine. What's wrong?
Phoenix is a great place. What's wrong with Phoenix?
Oh, you mean besides the heat?
It's a dry heat.
Broiled or baked, it doesn't matter. You're still getting overcooked.
Hey, if you spend the summer in southern Ontario, you'd be begging to go to Arizona. You would be begging for the desert. I'm not kidding.
No.
People are always like, oh, California, it's so hot. I'm like, are you kidding me right now? Come to Ontario.
No, I just go to the nearest ice house.
And where the humidity is so thick that you can cut it with a knife and you will want the desert. I promise you.
No, I'll just go to an ice house, move in, set up camp.
Anyway, so yeah, they're going to be in Phoenix, and if they can deliver Chris and Angel to him safely after the hearing, he will put them in a brand new tax bracket.
You know, that I had a question about that though, because he wanted to make sure that his kids were safe in order to testify.
Yeah.
But he really doesn't know if they're going to be safe until afterwards.
Yeah. I know.
There's something about that sequence that just didn't make sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. He hasn't really thought this through.
Yeah.
So, and Laura asks whether or not the government will provide protection, and he says that the Grey Corporation reaches into the government. He says, so this mysterious corporation who we know nothing about apparently has deep roots like a James Bond villain. Mm-hmm. And he says that they have 3 futures in their hands, his children's, and the investigation, which technically is more than 3, but we're going to just pretend that he can do math.
Yes.
So.
2 + 2 = 22.
Exactly.
Yeah, and we do find out later that Gray Kirk has bought themselves a senator.
Yeah.
Which,
I mean, who hasn't? I've got a senator, don't you?
yeah. Let's
It's
not
easy
go
to buy
there.
a politician these days, right?
Yeah.
So Steele seems
politics. The only job where you can go in and earn 10 times what the salary is, come out a multi-millionaire, and nobody says, how did that happen?
Yeah, precisely. So
anyway,
Steele seems impressed by the sales pitch, and he said, and it seems that they're on board with the idea. Mildred is brought into the room, and Steele and Laura reassure her it was only a test. So she's unimpressed. Like, yeah. And I don't blame Mildred at all for this, because, like, not only was she kidnapped, right? Now she's like, oh, don't worry, they just used you.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Like, I feared for my life for nothing. Fantastic. So what does she do? She throws a drink in their face, which I love.
I'm a lousy sport. Okay, so what?
That poor henchman. Again, I don't know if it's the same one that got knocked out, but oof.
No, it's the one that sold out. But anyway.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Jackson and Mr. Ross.
Yes.
So we get a scene change. We see a black car with the words, "Is this the limo? Did they repurpose this?"
That was in my notes. Different limo ? It's not the Steele license plate. It's a generic California license plate. So either they have multiple license plates that they just flip in and out, which is I think illegal, or they have a different limo for this purpose that doesn't say Steele.
Yeah, because it also has the words Steele Tours on the front. So
and that's a magnetic sign.
Yeah, true.
So I'm thinking they went down to rent a limo and said, hey, we need to borrow one for a week, and
This also is, I figured out how they save money on this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Here it is. This is where they save money. Wardrobe.
They didn't have Fred?
Well, they did. Yeah, Fred demands such a salary. Yeah, he can only be in the odd episode. But no, they saved it on wardrobe because they wear the same clothes throughout the entire episode. So they didn't need to anyway, no, it's just a joke. It's a bad one. So yeah, we've got this. They're wearing identical chauffeurs' outfits, and Steele wonders if they've gone about this a little too enthusiastically. Couples costumes. Laura then tells him about the girls in 4 East. So I kind of like this detail about her past. She talks about the women she went to college with. She says one is a neurosurgeon, one is a TV executive, and one has a seat in the stock exchange. She says they're all raising families while working these high-powered careers. And she says she doesn't even have a goldfish.
2 questions.
So, yeah, I had a couple too, but you go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, where did this come from? She's never seemingly had an interest in settling down and raising a family. And I use the term settling down, not to mean giving up the job, but just, domestic life, and even with a job. She's never had any inclination in raising a family that we've seen. In fact, she seems to be, I won't say adverse to the idea, but she's never, it's never been something that seems to rate high on her list. And then what happened to Nero?
Yeah. Okay. So the answer to the first, funnily enough, my exact notes are, where does this seem to be coming from? Do you think Laura is genuinely worried about the fact she doesn't have a family yet? So almost word for word the same note that you have. And also we've wondered about Nero before, because he's absent almost the entirety of Red Holt Steele to show back up at the loft when she walks in and finds piano there, and we never see him again. So here's where I make my obligatory Buffy reference and say that I think that he suffered the same fate as Miss Kitty Fantastico.
I have no clue.
Let me explain. In Buffy, Willow, one of the main characters, Willow, and her girlfriend Tara, they adopt a kitten, and they named her Miss Kitty Fantastico, because of course that's what you do. And we see Miss Kitty in a few episodes, and then Miss Kitty disappears, and we never see Miss Kitty again. Well, later on in season 7, so this was season, I think, 4 or 5, where they adopt Miss Kitty. Later on in season 7, Dawn, Buffy's little sister, is chastised for leaving a crossbow on the table and is told that there are strict rules about crossbows in the house ever since the incident with Miss Kitty Fantastico. So, I don't know, maybe the agency gun accidentally went off. Maybe I don't... Maybe it was a crossbow, a rogue crossbow. I don't know, but Nero is apparently gone. And we have no answer as to where he went or why he's never been mentioned again. And Laura seems to be declaring herself a domestic, inept person because she doesn't even have a goldfish when she had a cat, and we know she did. Anyway.
Yes.
You're right. Nero is annoying me too.
As far as the raising the families and settling down thing, I don't really think it's about the family directly. I think it's about the fact that she feels outclassed by these other girls. One's a neurosurgeon. Oh, she's only a detective. One's a television executive. Oh, she's only an detective. One's got a seat on the stock exchange. Oh, you're only a detective. Oh, and they're all married and raising families. Yeah, you're just a detective. I think that's the only thing I can come up with to justify and explain her attitude and comments.
I don't know. She has seemed adverse in the past, but that adversity only ever seems to come out where her mother's around. Like anybody else, she hasn't really necessarily seemed adverse per se, so much as indifferent. Right? Like she...
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I was meaning to say, but yeah, I said it badly.
But she's also... Their relationship is becoming more of a relationship with a capital R. She has seen him with the baby in Steel Knuckles. So maybe somewhere in the back of her mind, that kind of stuck in her head that she saw him with a child. And I think maybe it's a mixture of both. I think maybe you're right that she is feeling like, okay, her friends are all in these really, really big careers and raising families. And maybe she's wondering, okay, am I just a detective? But I also wonder if maybe she's looking at him and thinking, okay, he is good with infants from what she's seen, and wondering, is this something I want? I don't know if she necessarily even thinks she does want it, but she's wondering if she does. And so therefore, in her mind, taking this case as a way of figuring out, do I like kids? Do I want to be around kids? Is this a thing that I actually care about? Or am I just looking at the girls in Fort East the way she looks at the Johansons, which she mentions later on, right? Like a seemingly having everything that the perfect life, but obviously nothing's perfect.
Yeah.
That's my theory.
Yeah. I think it's more just a matter of they've outclassed her. They've got it all. She's just this. And I'm not, I mean, I'm not going to say that she isn't interested in knowing how she would respond with kids, but I don't think that's really, I don't know, to me, the way I read it, I don't really see that as her major motivation, even though that's kind of how it's being presented here.
Well, he does challenge her on it later, and we'll get there when we get there, but I don't know. I think there's a part of her that is wondering if, like, 'cause she's never pursued that part of her life before. And so maybe she is just sort of asking herself, okay, I've been focused on this part of my career. I have my career. Everything is going as it should in my career. Do I want more? And if so, like, he actually says to her right after that, he assumes she plans on getting her feet wet looking after the Gallen children. She admits damp, and Steele points out the quandary of the independent woman, right? Wondering what she's missing out on, who she's missing it with. Laura agrees that time is passing, pleasantly enough, but passing. So I think she's aware. And if you think about it, in the first season, there was an episode script that they didn't go with where she's celebrating, I think it was her 26th birthday. So if we go by that logic, she's 27 here, which means she's pushing 30. There is an undeniable biological clock that ticks. Whether or not you choose to answer it or not is every woman chooses differently, right? But like in the back of her mind, I'm sure she's thinking, okay, if I do want kids, if I do decide this is something I want, I'm 27. there's certain steps you need to take, unless you're planning on going with artificial insemination or single adoption. If you want the partner and the children, then you need to get the partner and the children. So like, I wonder if she's kind of, she says she admits damp, get testing the waters, whatever. I wonder if she's sort of thinking, okay, if he's somebody I want to seriously pursue a relationship with, and if I decide to have children, are these two things going to click? Or is one of them, like, maybe she takes on the case and decides he's terrible with children, because he does challenge her on that later on. And maybe she decides, hey, I don't like him either, so I don't want to have children, and I'm happy the way things are, right? But maybe not.
All right. All right.
That's my theory anyway.
Yeah. Okay, fine.
But it is, interestingly, this is a conversation they would have never had in season 1. Like,
no, that's true.
Not a chance.
That's definitely true.
She'd be terrified he'd run for the hills, and honestly, I'm not entirely certain he wouldn't. So,
he seems to be trying to do that right now.
Well, kind of, because he says he wonders why he has a neurotic impulse to apologize for that, right? So,
yeah.
There are two conversations going on here. There is the conversation they're actually having verbally, and there's there's the subtext, which is pretty much text here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Laura's saying, I want to see how I do with children. But if they're in a relationship, and we know they are, that underlying text is, I want to see if we can function with children, and therefore I want to see if that's, so he's kind of thinking, okay, do I apologize for the fact that time is passing for her and I haven't, I don't know, made an honest woman out of her? But like, yeah.
Okay. Yes, I think we beat that horse.
Well, I mean, what about him? Do you think he cares one way or the other? Like, whether he has kids?
I don't. I think right now that's the farthest thing from his mind.
Interestingly enough, though, I think if the two of them were in the right space and on the right page, she'd be the one that would have to be convinced, not him. I think he'd jump in quicker than she would.
Maybe.
Personally.
Maybe.
But anyway.
So he would be, he wouldn't necessarily get there as quickly as she would, but once he does, he's all in, whereas she's more of a... he would be, yeah. She gets to that point quicker, but it takes her longer to progress in. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my theory anyway. So yeah, we see, we get a scene change. We see a large building, cut to an inside of an office. This is the James Bond building, the villain, the Spectre, whatever you want to call it, headquarters.
I got to say two things about that office. Did you notice on the back wall, the name, the company name? First of all, I got a problem with the spelling. I've never understood. Gray for gray always looks wrong to me.
It's the correct spelling.
No, it's Grey. Anyway, that slogan, the company that gets things done. Who thought of that slogan? That is the dumbest slogan. One of the worst slogans. We're a company that does stuff. Okay.
We don't even know what they do. That's, I think, the most hilarious part of it is that, okay, what stuff? What stuff do you do? Like, you get stuff done.
Things.
Cool.
Well, it says so right there. Things.
We do all the things. Okay, cool. It's like they were trying to make the most generic evil corporation without actually, like, giving any detail whatsoever. Like, they just left the script bare here, and it's quite funny. I agree. Yes. We've got a woman named Mrs. Trout who ushers in a man. On
Sounds
the wall
fishy.
we see, you're fired.
Sorry.
On the wall we see that there is the Greykirk Corporation, and I mentioned the slogan. She says they've had the phones installed just how we asked, and I'm going to have some questions about the phones later.
Okay.
But yeah, we've got the terrible slogan, and then we see the phones are, we've got a black phone, a white phone, and a red phone, which is confusing. So the man opens a briefcase, brings out a black cover that goes over the receiver part of the phone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming this is to keep it from being bugged.
Yeah, he says that anybody that's bugging the line will only hear a high-pitched whining tone.
Okay, was that was that a real thing?
I didn't look it up because I really didn't know how to look it up. My thinking is
plastic thingies that go over phones in the 80s that keep it from being looked.
That's sometimes what my searches look like, and the results are usually less than satisfying.
Fair.
My thinking is that it's not going to, I mean, a whining tone. Okay, you could put an electronic whine over a audio signal that would be picked up on electronic devices, but it's not necessarily going to interfere with your ability to hear what's being said unless it's going to do that for the person on the other end of the phone as well.
That's what I thought too.
And there are scramblers. There are devices that manipulate the audio signal and digitize it, for example, these days, or convert it into some sort of a scrambled signal, but you have to have a descrambler on the other end. So then presumably this senator has one on the other end as well.
Which if he did, he wouldn't need to explain it.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that would also raise a lot of questions. I mean, it's easier to hide money in a bank account when you're being dishonest than it is to hide a descrambling device that you attach to your phone.
Yeah.
People are going to see that pretty easily, whereas they have to get a court order to get into your banking records. So, yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's one of those things where you see it a lot in television, in movies, and I don't know how much basis and truth there is for it the way they present it. I'm sure that there are devices that do what they say, but they're more involved. That's
okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense. And this is the white phone that he's talking on. Yes. So he's picked up the white phone. He asks for Senator, it sounds like Collier, and says, or Collier. Yeah, says his name is Stephen Cole, so that's who this guy is. He presses a button, and the panel with the company's name and logo on it opens to reveal a map with some large red dots on it. He is a Bond villain, because this is what Bond villains do. They have maps, they have big red dots, they have buttons and red phones and black phones.
Yes.
So they make some small talk, and Cole tells the senator that he has some news he's been asked to pass along. He tells him that with the help of the Justice Department, Walter Gallen is back in the country. He also assures him that the phone call is perfectly safe. As you said, anyone who taps it will only hear an irritating electronic whine. He reassures the senator that the chairman believes that Gallen's presence will only help the Greycoat Corporation. He then tells him that they believe there is an area where Mr. Gallen is vulnerable to his persuasion. I want to know about this. Like, I get it that this company is a plot device. Like, that's all they are. But the plot feels very thin to me, that we've got this powerful corporation that apparently reaches into all levels of government and just gets stuff done. Like, I don't know. I'd
Great
like a little more.
slogan for a company.
Yeah. I don't know. Does this work for you? Or, like, I know we're just supposed to hand wave. These are the bad guys. Gallen is testifying against the bad guys, but could we not just like give it maybe a tiny bit of detail?
This is a bit like if you were making a TV show, and let's say it was an old Western, and you have these facades. Now, when you're doing a Western correctly, you see these facades, and it looks like they're entire buildings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's supposed to.
They're just like.
Yeah, but this is almost like they filmed it, and it's like, oh, well, we can see the back of that facade, and we know it's a facade. Yeah, well, don't worry about it. The audience won't notice. I mean, that's it's very, very thin, and it's you're right. It's very, very Bondish in the sense that they're bad guys for the sake of being bad guys, and we really don't get a good explanation as to.
Like, if Gallen is so powerful that he can bring these people down, like, what did he do?
Yeah,
what did they do?
All
like.
It's a very, very weak foundation for the story.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll just say it.
Like, don't get me. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I mean, I'm just going to say it's a weak foundation for the story. It really, it's kind of Yeah, the audience won't notice.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't mind, like, I enjoy this episode. It's probably not on my list of favorites, although we'll see when we get to the end of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy the episode. I don't dislike it. It just, you're right. I think that they, even just giving a line of dialogue that explains what the company does and why they're so dangerous would help to sort of solidify this feeling of like, okay, they can get to these kids anywhere. They're real bad. They got colored phones, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I could buy a couple of phones from the dollar store that are different colors. It doesn't make me a supervillain. So, you know,
Right.
what are we?
Are you sure?
Well, nowadays it would be like a burner. You'd have a burner phone, right? It would be,
Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah,
anyway.
it's just there's, you know, if you're going to have a plot device, at least have a good backstory that you can reference, even if it's not deeply referenced. It's just something that you can build on to give it legitimacy, and there just doesn't really seem to be anything here.
No. Yeah, I agree with you. But they get stuff done, so that's all we care about.
Yes, and in the script, they do spell gray correctly. So anyway.
It is the European/Canadian way to spell it. And it is valid. Just like you say the letter Z incorrectly, I would just like to point out.
I've never said the word Z. So how could I say it incorrectly?
Oh, okay, fine. We're going there. All right. So we get a scene change. Gallon is saying goodbye to Angel. He appears now. Here's the thing. Like, he appears quite emotional with her. She tells him that she's going to miss him more than he misses her. He tells her not a chance. Like,
he's just missing the money that he peeled out of his wallet.
Well, probably, because like she asked for some pocket money. He gives her $5, and then she's like, "Really?" And then he gives her 50 more in the 80s. And Laura Snidely wonders how deep his pockets are. So I kind of like that comment. That was good. And then Angel marches up to Steele and tells him that her bags are in the house.
I love his line.
Yeah. So I gotta say, like, we're gonna get into how good and how bad they are with these kids at various different points, right?
Mm-hmm.
I applaud his response to her here. I don't always think his responses to the kids are good, just as Laura's aren't, you know, there's moments where she's good with them and moments not so good. But this is a good response because these kids are clearly spoiled rotten.
Oh, that's putting it politely.
They clearly don't get told no or have to do anything for themselves, or, you know, it seems like adults are catering to their every whim at every second of every day. They are. He's not rude to her in this. He's not mean. He's just, well, won't they be lonely without you? Like, you've got 2 feet in a heartbeat. You can get them. And I appreciate this. I actually think this is a really good response. Yeah. So
somebody should have told them no a long time ago.
Exactly. I'm going to give a parenting tick to Mr. Steele. So that's 1 for him. I'm gonna tally them by the end of this. So he gets a tally for this response. She's not impressed, obviously. She stomps away. The door then opens and we get looks like Shelby exit with the bags.
Yes.
Gallon introduces her as Shelby Haynes, his secretary.
Mm-hmm.
Also, apparently the woman who's been raising. We don't know how long he's been gone, so. I'd love to know how long she's been. And here's another part where there's plot holes that kind of like make this episode a little frustrating, because like I would love to know how long she's been looking after his kids.
Yeah. See, that's right? Another thing. It's all part of that confusion about where were the kids while he was out of the country? Were they with him? Were they here? Were they shuttling back and forth?
Has it been 6 months? Has it been 2 years? Like, what does the timeline look like here?
Yeah.
Because if it's been a short period, then obviously Angel has her dad wrapped around her finger, and that's where the spoiling has come from. If it's been longer, then clearly it's been Miss Haynes that has been giving the children whatever they want as a maybe way of making up for the fact that their dad's not there. I don't know.
Mhm.
It's hard to tell, right?
Yeah, it's all very confusing. I'm going to say just my impression is that he's been out of the country for quite a while. I mean,
I get that too. Yeah.
You know, if you've been gone for 6 months, you're just on an extended stay. If you're an expatriate,
Yeah.
you've been gone for quite a while. I'm
going to assume at least a couple of years. Like that's maybe where I'm coming from with that.
Yeah.
Which would make some degree of sense. Like, and I'm gonna throw the kids a little bit of a bone here, which is shocking because I've been pretty harsh on them so far and we're barely in the episode. But like, if you consider that we find out later that Angel's mother left them when she was 5, she's 9 now. If her dad's been absent for a couple of years too, like these kids have not had any stability whatsoever. There's been
and
no
realistically, how strict is a secretary going to be with the kids?
Exactly.
Especially if she's trying to get in good with the dad, you know.
Oh, she definitely is. We know this. So like, there's no routine. We don't get the impression that these kids have anybody, like you said, to tell them no. And so it's kind of in some way not their fault that they've been underserved by the adults around them and they've turned into little jerks as a result. So that's where I'm going with that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, Chris is well on his way to becoming one of the sleazebags from Steele eligible. Or maybe a young Harvey Weinstein.
I wonder if he's got the profit in his. Yeah, I got a Weinstein vibe off of him too. Like some of the things he says, and this is the thing. And I'm like, as somebody who deals with teenagers on a daily basis, without getting into any specifics, I can tell you firsthand that kids that come out with stuff that like what Chris came out with, they're getting it from the adults around them.
Oh yeah.
Like,
and
if he's growing up in that mansion, this is what he's seeing. This is how men get women from what he's seen.
Yeah.
Right.
Which ties into something
gross.
Later on. But anyway.
Yeah, oh God. Yeah. We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get there.
So yeah, he introduces Shelby. She asks when the kids will be back. He tells her he hasn't decided yet. And obviously she's not. We can see she's not pleased with this comment. So it's clear that she's not fully briefed on what's going on, which is interesting. And then we've got another car pulls up. No, we're not there yet. The door opens and Chris comes out. He's about 15. I think, yeah, he's 15 because he says he doesn't have his license yet, but he will when he's 16.
He will. He'll get his yacht when he turns 16.
Yeah. And he's clearly enamored with Laura. Oh, yeah. He barely acknowledges Steele, who has to put his bags in the car. Gallon tells him to have a nice trip, and the car drives away. Another car pulls up, and Gallon and Shelby have an exchange. She asks where he will be if he needs her, and he says that he won't. She's clearly disappointed for being shut out, and she kind of says there's a time when you wouldn't have excluded me, and he tells her that he'll always be grateful. And she says for looking after the kids, and he says for everything. So are they? Here's my question. We know obviously she wants more. Obviously, were they involved? Like, were they involved?
I knew you were going there. That was makes me wonder about their relationship. Was it purely employer/employee or something else? I'm thinking that it was something else, that she was some recreational activity that he had going on as well as being his secretary. And she took it as being indicative of a more serious potential for their relationship, whereas he was looking at it as more of a Chris type situation.
Yeah, well, I mean, he obviously trusted her enough to look after his children, and I don't think he's that
She's a
terrible
good employee.
of a human. Yeah, I mean, I guess, but
it's a weird relationship.
I don't think he's a good father by any metric.
No.
He's a terrible father, but I do think he does love his kids. Like, you can be a bad parent and still love your children. So
True.
I don't know that he would necessarily, he's going to a lot of trouble to ensure his kids are safe here. So it seems odd that he would just entrust his kids to an employee unless he trusted her really, really well.
Mm-hmm. Right.
While he was out of the country, right?
There's just a multitude of levels to their relationship. There's the employee-employer as the secretary. There's the trusted guardian of his kids. and then there's the recreational activity. And
Fair.
I think those are 3 different levels that are actually going on simultaneously. And
Okay.
I think he views all those levels as being separate. And what you're talking about here about him trusting her with the kids is that second level of being a trusted guardian. I think she's got all 3 of those scrambled together.
Yeah, maybe.
And she doesn't see any division between those. Of course, we also find out later that she sold him out as well.
So, I mean, that kind of makes me wonder if he figured out, at least on some level, that he couldn't trust her. Maybe he doesn't know specifically that because she says, you used to trust me implicitly. What's changed? And he doesn't really give her an answer.
Mm-hmm.
He just kind of says, like, I'll always be grateful, right? So she says she's grateful for his gratitude, but it's clear that she doesn't really feel that way. So
there's a line.
Yeah,
I'll be grateful for your. I'm grateful to you for your gratitude.
So yeah, I'm wondering if he suspects her, or at least knows enough that he can't trust anybody at the moment.
It's probably he just doesn't trust anybody at the moment.
Yeah.
And, he may still trust her entirely. He shouldn't, because we find out that she kind of sold him out. But I think he might trust her, but there are certain protocols that he has either been instructed to follow or that he feels that he needs to follow just in case. Because, you can trust somebody and yet still, as a result of you're talking to them or, their normal routine, something slips out that they didn't intend to slip out. True. that gives somebody who is looking for clues a clue. Something that,
that's true.
Might be totally innocent, but a person who is looking for details, they say, oh, okay, I know what that means. Nobody else will pick it up, but I know what that means. So, it's good security.
Yeah, that is true. So we switch to the Fabulous Party Pizza restaurant, which looks to me like Chuck E. Cheese and the circus had a baby.
Well, it's definitely a Chuck E. Cheese. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is funny because I only know Chuck E. Cheese in a cultural context because of stuff I've seen on TV from American television.
Okay.
I think once upon a time there might have been a Chuck E. Cheese here, but they're not here anymore. So I don't think I've ever been inside one, but I've seen movies and stuff where they're set inside them. So I know enough to know that this is supposed to be a bit of a Chuck E. Cheese knockoff.
Yes.
And it's nauseating.
Yeah, so is their pizza. Oh,
yeah.
Did I say that out loud? I'm sorry.
I mean,
just pretend I didn't say that.
Your spokesman is a rat. How appetizing can your pizza be? Right? I'm sorry, but that's vermin. You're using vermin to sell your pizza. I don't know that I would be doing that from a marketing perspective, but here we are.
Which could explain why just not too many years before this episode, Chuck E. Cheese actually declared bankruptcy, and
oh, did they?
The original owner wound up having to sell the company, because I did a little bit of looking up on it because I knew it was a Chuck E. Cheese knockoff.
Is Chuck E. Cheese actually gone then?
No, they're still around. They've got
okay.
The original owner, who was somebody high up with the Atari Corporation.
Huh.
He started Chuck E. Cheese, and at about the early 80s, he got into some really serious financial trouble with the company and had to sell it. And it got bought by another company, and it's still around. We've got one here in Anchorage. But yeah,
let's see if we have it. I don't think we have any in Canada, but I'm going to check. Now I want to know.
It's definitely a place to take kids to play with the arcade things more than it is to get good pizza. So.
Okay, I'm checking because I want to know Canada. Chuck E. Cheese Canada. So do we have any locations near me? Let's see. 5 locations in Ontario. So apparently there are locations in Ontario. Mississauga, North. Oh, they're all in Toronto. Okay.
Well, and the concept though as easy as it is to put it down and say, "Well, that's so," their food's not any good. All it is an arcade that uses food as an excuse to get kids in there. It's a concept that seems to have worked because, after all, look at Dave and
there's
Buster's.
tons of places that do that.
Dave and Buster's is huge, and that's basically what they are. Just an adult version of Chuck E. Cheese, but instead of pizza, they serve like hamburgers, and I think they've got a bar and such. So it's more just an adult version of, Yeah,
we don't have that here, but we do have here things like Chuck E. Cheese. Like, we do have restaurants with like arcades and games and stuff like that where you play for prizes and whatever. So like the formula, you're right, is something that we are all familiar with, even if we don't have that company. And both the kids are unimpressed, which is kind of funny. Laura's trying to find something they'll be interested in doing. She suggests the Grand Canyon, to which Angel goes, boring.
It is.
I mean, I've been there. Hey, I thought it was cool.
It's a hole in the ground. You want to go see something interesting? Go to Bryce Canyon. That is interesting. Grand Canyon, yeah, okay.
Grand Canyon was pretty cool. I mean, you could make the argument that the Niagara Falls are just a waterfall, but, people come to see those. So what was funny was when we were in Arizona, we went to the Grand Canyon, and then as we were driving out of it, because we did this trip to California, this whole road trip, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as we're like leaving Arizona or heading towards, I think it was California, I'm not sure, we came across this site of like the first meteor crater, like sighting, essentially the first time they'd found a meteor crater in the ground.
Okay.
And they had a whole you could buy tickets and go in and view it, right? So we did. We bought tickets. We went in. We had to look. We come out. My mom, we get in the car. She looks at me and she's like, all right, I'm not paying any more money to look at any more holes in this state. Somebody said it's a big hole. Like, that's immediately what I thought of. Yeah. So Steele suggests a reservation and then makes some really inappropriate whooping sounds, which I'm going to chalk that up to the 80s. But interestingly, I just wanted to point out the difference between the word reserve and reservation, because in Canada, we use the word reserve, and there's actually a legal distinction between the two. And I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but I just thought that was interesting because I don't often hear the word reservation used. And then when I do hear it, it's usually in American media. And I'm like, right, okay, that's what they're referred to there. So
yeah, I've never heard it called a reserve. When I hear the word reserve, I think of game reserve,
like a preservation. Yeah. No, here it's a reserve, and the official word is reserve, but people just call it the res. Like, that's what, if you're going somewhere for, you're going to buy cigarettes, or you're you live there, it's the res.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a legal distinction between the two things.
For the American vocabulary, I think res would be short for reservation, because that's from what I'm familiar with. For the Native American tribes in the lower 48, they live on what's called a reservation. Here in Alaska, the natives live in their villages, and I don't know if they've got any other term for them, but yeah.
So the difference here would be, if it's a reserve, it's territory that was set aside by the government, usually unfairly so, and there's all kinds of stuff behind it. But there's also things like unceded land, where you'll have what is considered to be land that was never officially given up but has been built upon. And many times, like, for example, my sister, her house that she bought in BC is on unceded territory. So essentially, it's still owned by the Indigenous peoples that were native to that area, and they own the house, but they don't really own the house.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of other stuff involved there. But anyway, Angel declares that plan boring as well. Laura persists, saying they were hired to take them on a cultural odyssey, and they live by their word. So sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure what else there is to what I think anything she said would have been declared boring, because these kids have all the money in the world.
Yes.
So presumably they've been to the Grand Canyon. They've been to, wherever they can suggest. They probably haven't been to the fabulous Party Pizza restaurant. So maybe that's a cultural odyssey, but I'm guessing their culinary fare is usually a little more upscale than this. But
yes, I'm sure it is.
Yeah. So as she says this, we cut to a van pulling up outside the restaurant. Two men get out. They enter the restaurant where they see the kids and Steele and Laura sitting in the booth. They notice the terrifying clowns that are apparently employed there by Nightmare Fuel clowns, and get an idea. So I'd like to know how they get all that makeup on so quickly. But
first of all, could two people look any more out of place in a kid's pizza restaurant than those two guys when they're walking in?
Right? They're just standing there and like creepily staring at the children.
Well, and as far as the makeup goes, they weren't actually wearing makeup. They were wearing half-face masks. But my question was, how did they get changed so fast? Because they weren't in there that long, and presumably they
did they steal somebody else's outfit as well? Like, were they just
the clowns? The original clowns went in. These guys followed the clowns
took them from them. Okay,
I'm guessing that the clowns didn't give up their costumes voluntarily, but even if they did, it takes a little bit longer to do all that and change all that.
And surprisingly, it fits them perfectly, right? We get the henchmen, I love that one scene in Indiana Jones when he, I think it's in the third movie, the Last Crusade, I think, where he knocks out one of the Nazis and he puts on the uniform and then realizes that it doesn't fit. I appreciate that because almost every single time you get a character, knock out another character and steal their clothes.
It's a perfect fit.
It's usually a perfect fit. So this was kind of in that vein. So they steal the clown costumes. Meanwhile, Chris is suggesting they get a hotel room and party. What is he? His 9-year-old sister is there. Is he suggesting they get some cocaine and just, I don't know, put her in the corner? Like, what is going on there?
So many things that just are not family friendly in this.
No, like, what is he? Laura naively insists they are partying. And Chris says, this is kid stuff.
I think she's deliberately trying to avoid the implication, but yes.
Yeah. And Chris says this is kid stuff, and Steele dryly reminds him they are kids. And then their dinner is announced, number 17 in the center ring. He gets up to go get it. As he leaves, one of the clowns starts distracting Angel. He lures her off to the side and grabs her. Laura, come on. Like, literally, that people are going to try to kidnap these children.
Uh-huh.
I wouldn't be letting her out of my sight, much less go off even inside the restaurant. Laura notices, she runs after just as the other clown attempts to grab Chris.
Well,
nobody's
not only
doing
that,
anything.
but she steals a pizza from the tray that the waitress has as she's walking by, and the waitress is just like, whatever, man.
Everybody's just sitting there while these kids are being grabbed by these clowns. They're struggling. What the heck, Fabulous Party Pizza? Is nobody thinking this is a little out of the ordinary?
Hey, I'm only getting minimum wage. I don't care, man.
Yeah, that's fair. I'd be like, I'm not dying for these clowns, literally. But they just, and these are the worst henchmen ever. Who tries to grab two children in a public place?
Yeah. They're not exactly. Yeah, they're not the sharpest tools in the shed.
Top tier. Yeah. Steele drops the pizza. He's probably grateful he at least got to do that. And runs towards Chris. He pours hot coffee on the hand of one of the clowns and grabs Chris, and they run through the kitchen. He pours tomato sauce on the floor, which trips them. They escape out the back.
Isn't it convenient? This one. Isn't it convenient and against food safety rules that a tub of pizza sauce just happens to be sitting there on a cart? Yes.
And it's open. It's wide. A fly could die in that. And I'm sorry, I worked in a restaurant. You would not do that. You would not do that.
You wouldn't leave it uncovered. You wouldn't leave it sitting out on a counter like that.
You'd have a lid.
You would have it in an ice bath.
Yeah. In a lid. You wouldn't just... Anyway, so he pours... And again, he comes into the kitchen. Nobody blinks. He's pouring sauce all over the floor.
They never do in TV shows and movies. Haven't you ever noticed that?
Yeah, they're always just like, oh, God, it's another chase. So, this is this is just a bit nuts. Chris is wondering who the clowns were, and Steele lamely says, "Oh, circus folk, they'll do anything for excitement," which is funny, considering the episode that went before this one.
Yeah.
Was the high-flying Steele. So, yeah. They look around the corner. They see the clowns have blocked the car. Laura notices a city bus left unattended and suggests that the A tour, which they explain is stealing a bus. Both kids like this idea because apparently that's fun. And Laura remarks that the way to their heart seems to be crime. So,
yes,
they steal a bus. As the driver is flirting with a woman. And I gotta say, that is a pretty bold move to assume that you are going to impress a woman. And I say this, my dad used to drive a city bus. Okay, so I am not in any way insulting bus drivers because my dad used to drive a bus. But that would not be his opening line, I guess, is all I'm saying. Like,
yeah. Yeah.
That would not be his opening line.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, yeah. They drive off. The clowns see. They give chase. We're on the bus. Steele's driving. Angel looks at him and accusingly calls him a thief, which is kind of funny.
Yeah. She was all for it a few minutes ago. But
yeah, she was like, cool. And now she's like, you're a thief. Yeah. I got to say, I feel bad for the poor passengers at the bus stop that watch the bus go by. They're probably like, oh, LA Transit, this is so typical. Right? Like
years ago, I saved an article. I wish I'd still had it. There was an article about the New York transit system. And yes, I'm going to throw New York under the bus, almost literally. There was an article talking about how transit passengers were complaining that buses which were in service were driving right past stops and not stopping to pick up passengers. And this would have been in the 70s. And the guy who was in charge of the transit system explained, and you're going to love this definition of somebody not understanding their job. He explained that their buses had schedules that they had to maintain, and they couldn't do that if they had to continually stop to pick up and drop off passengers. What is so hard to understand about this?
This job would be great if it weren't for the customers.
That's
what the heck? Well, they clearly aren't the company that gets stuff done. I'll tell you that right now.
No, they aren't.
They don't get stuff done at all. I mean, don't get me wrong. I have had buses drive by, and it's really because when I was at university, there was obviously that one run that did all the stops and then went up to the university, right? So it was usually pretty full. During exam periods, it was extra full because people weren't cutting class. They actually had to be at their exams. So, the closer you lived to, the closer you lived to the hill, because I went to school in Niagara Falls, so it was on the escarpment where my university was located. So the closer you lived to the escarpment, the fuller the bus was, right? Because it made all the stops before that. So, if you had an exam that morning at, say, 11 a.m., assume that you're going to miss the first two buses and maybe get the third kind of thing, right? Because you'd see them go by and they'd be packed to the brim.
But wouldn't they stop and just at least tell people, hey, sorry, we're full, wait for the next one?
Nope.
No?
They would just keep going. The assumption was just that if it was full, it was full. And you could see you'd see there'd be people pressed against the door, it was that full kind of thing, right? Sometimes it might have it on the front. It might say full. And they just, But interestingly, in the UK, I found this out when I was living in Scotland, you have to actually flag the bus down or it's not going to stop. It's like a taxi. You could be standing at the stop because their bus system is privatized. So there are a bunch of different companies, right? And you could be waiting for one company and not another. There's a gazillion buses that will stop at one bus stop. So basically, as the bus comes I found this out the hard way because I saw 3 buses pass me and I was like, what is going on? And then I noticed that people were stepping out and putting their hand up. So the driver knew, okay, this person's waiting for me, and they would stop. But otherwise, they're just going to keep going. They do not stop. If they don't see anybody putting their hand out, as I learned, they just keep on driving. So maybe that's what this is.
And if you do step out in front of them and hold up your hand, you hope they stop.
Yeah, well, you don't step out in front of the bus, but you step out and you put your hand up. So yeah, Laura is keeping a lookout. Chris tells her that she isn't a tour guide, and she looks a little nervous at first that he's like figured it out. And then he says, "A girl with your looks doesn't need to work this hard." Nice line, buddy. Okay.
Yeah. But her response is kind of off too. Yeah, there are times I tell myself the same thing.
This is one thing that actually frustrates me about her in this episode, is that she doesn't lay down the law with him.
Yeah, her responses is in so many circumstances are written for the comedy, and they're not what a person who has her intelligence and her understanding they're not the kind of responses that you would give in order to stifle this direction, this action.
She needs to be, because she laughs as if she's flattered. And sure, okay. In this moment, he's a 15-year-old kid feeding her a terrible line. It might seem cute. I could see her laughing here, right? But then he continues, right? Because here's the thing. She wouldn't laugh if a grown man said this to her. If a grown man said, you don't need to work, a woman with your looks doesn't need to work this hard, she would be pissed right off, and rightly so. But because he's a kid, I think she says, okay, it's harmless, he's cute, he thinks he's flirting, and she laughs, right? But he presses on and gets progressively creepier as he does so, right?
And she could put a stop to it, but she doesn't. Yeah. She almost encourages it by her responses.
Yeah, because
and that's throughout the episode.
I know, and it drives me. That's a major criticism that I have, is that she tacked, and there are a few moments where she could have gently explained to him that he's too young,
and his comments are inappropriate.
Behavior is inappropriate. Yes, yeah, like two things that are separate from each other, right? Because she tactfully says there are times when she tells herself the same thing. Chris suggests ditching Steele and going to have a party on his yacht.
And we'll have a ball, says, you know what I mean?
Yeah, your yacht. And he insists it will be his when he's 16. He says they'll have a ball. She politely declines. He then says, how about if I throw in a diamond bracelet? She looks a little surprised, says that's quite a throw in. And this is where, again, this is creepy. He touches her leg and says every woman has her price. He had to have learned that from his dad or from the other men around him. She slaps his hand away, but she doesn't tell him off. This is your first moment, Laura, where you should say, even if I were your age, Chris, this is inappropriate behavior. You cannot be doing this to women. But she doesn't.
The only rationale I can think of for her behavior, and this is not at all acceptable rationale, is, well, the customer's always right. We don't want to offend the customer. I don't believe that line. I have never believed that line.
No, I don't either.
But that's the only thing I can come up with that could even remotely explain why she isn't behaving the way she would normally, and B, why she isn't behaving the way she should.
I think I can almost see why she doesn't say anything here, in the sense that I think she should. Again, this is not excusing it, but I think she's maybe hoping that she can just, ignore it and it goes away, because they only need to get these kids to Phoenix and then they're done, right? But it doesn't go away. He continues this behavior, and also, as you said, it escalates, and we hear sirens in the background, and I think maybe she's seeing that he's a kid. And I think maybe she's telling herself he doesn't know what he's saying, or he doesn't really mean it.
No.
Right?
No. She's smart enough to know that he knows what he's saying, and he does mean it.
I don't know. I think she sees him as a child. If a grown man had said that, she would know what those intentions were. But I think she's maybe thinking to herself, or at least trying to convince herself, he doesn't understand what, he wouldn't know what to do with me if he had me in that situation. He doesn't know where that end game is, right? I
will agree that she's trying to convince herself of that. I don't think she really believes it. And that's why you have to convince yourself of something, is because you don't really believe it.
Exactly. That's fair. Yeah. It's very my skin crawled when he put his hand on her leg and then said every woman has her price. There was a genuinely visceral reaction from that. And it's gross. It's very gross. Because he learned that from somewhere.
Yeah,
There's no other... Yeah. Yeah. Or Jeffrey.
Yeah.
So yeah, they hear sirens. She goes up to join Steele at the front. He asks her how many years you get for stealing city property. She says, I think they figure it by weight, which is kind of funny. She tells him to hang a right at the next corner. He asks what good that will do, and she says, a lot if I know where we are. There's a lot being made about her understanding of LA geography in this episode, I've noticed, which is kind of interesting. He lets them off and says he's going to ditch the bus. Angel asks why they had to get off, and Laura says so she can go to the bathroom. Angel says she doesn't have to go. As Laura reaches a payphone, and begins to make a call, telling Angel she should have to go, which is a weird exchange. Meanwhile, Steele's attempt to ditch the bus is kind of funny here. He allows the cops to chase him to the court, and they corner the bus, and he comes off the bus with his hands in the air, raised, and pretends to talk to someone. Yeah, and backs up towards the cops, pretending to talk to someone on the bus. You don't want to hurt anyone. I understand why you hijacked the bus, General Washington. The Delaware is frozen. These things happen.
It's a great bit.
It is.
But I'm sorry, I don't think the police would just let him walk away. I mean, at minimum, they would hold him as a material witness.
Yeah. So he backs into the cop, the cop asks if he's loony and if he's armed, and Steele says yes to both questions, and they say get back, right? So he manages to run off as the cop uses the megaphone to address the fictional general, which I do like. Steele joins Laura at the phone, who tells her that Mildred is bringing new wheels. She says one of the girls from college, the girls from 4 East, lives in this neighborhood. Their leader, a child psychologist named Barbara Frick. Oh, Barbara.
Can I make a
yes,
comment
please.
on just before we get to Barbara? After the phone call, Steele joins them, and Laura tells Steele about Barbara. And they start to leave. Did you catch what happened?
How Chris grabs her by the waist?
Mm-hmm. And did you see the look on her face? And yet
I wasn't looking at her face, I'll be honest. Yeah.
She did. It was like one of those, and yet she apparently still didn't say anything. I mean, she was definitely uncomfortable with that.
Yeah,
action.
like this kid continually makes her uncomfortable, and like I don't know. It's very strange. It is a strange, plot line that they just don't ever address.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you. Like, we get to Barbara's living room. She says to Laura that she is such a smarmy B word. I can't say it, but she's a B word. She's a witch with a B. She just, I never thought I'd see the day when Laura would bring 2 kids to her, even one's not her own.
She's
bug off, lady. Come on.
I've got some comments as we get later in this exchange, but yeah. But it's interesting. There's a lot of tension between Steele and Laura here. And I mean, it's palpable. And granted, this hasn't been a pleasure cruise. This has not been the Love Boat.
No.
But why is there this level of tension this soon? Okay, I understand there was the incident at the pizza arena. There's the incident with the bus. But this is not about the situations that they've been running into. This is personal between the two of them, which is why I say earlier that when Laura's comment about, Mr. Steele loves kids, there's something going on that we haven't had explained to us.
Yeah, this is a weird undercurrent. I agree, because as you said, all of the situations they've been in so far have been part of the case. The kids were almost taken. They had to steal the bus, but this is par for the course with them. There's nothing that's happened so far aside from Chris's inappropriate behavior, which Steele hasn't really clocked yet. They haven't had any issues with the kids so far. Again, aside from Chris, but they have to deal with as a team, as quote unquote pseudo parents or whatever you want to call it. That hasn't happened yet. So you're right. It's bizarre because Steele pipes up and says Laura's wonderful with children, so tolerant. At what point did we not get any evidence? Or where do we have evidence to the contrary yet? It comes up later, but where do we have evidence to the contrary yet? It hasn't happened. I wonder if there's something missing from the script that was taken out at some point.
Well,
Because I, to be honest, I didn't read I don't even know. Do we have the one for this one?
we do. It's
Okay.
dated about 2 months before it aired. It's very, very close to what we have as the final. There's some things that were added, some little interspersed scenes, like this scene at Grey Kirk. I didn't see in there the original scene, and there's some lines, small lines here and there, but largely what's in the script is correct as far it lines up with what's in the episode. But yeah, there's just this whole undercurrent between the two of them of tension. It has nothing to do with the kids. It has nothing to do with the case. It's tension between the two of them, and the case and the kids are simply an irritant toward this situation that they've got going between them, and we never get it explained.
No, and then he mouths to Laura that he loves Barbara for some reason.
Yeah.
Again, we don't really have a reason for that yet.
And it's obviously snarky. He doesn't love her.
No, and then Chris and Angel run into the room fighting. Chris says Angel hit him. Angel says Chris raised his voice. Chris says Angel took a sandwich. Angel says she was hungry. And then Steele looks at her and says, "Be wonderful." Like he's challenging her in a really weird way.
Yes.
Laura looks as if she's about to yell, which is weird because, like, we're not at the level of yelling yet. Like, I don't know about you, but as a parent, like, there's levels, right? We haven't gotten there yet. At least not in my opinion. And so is Steele. And then Barbara's like, "Can I try?" So they both sit down, and Barbara says, "Angel, I hear you. Chris, I hear you.
Barbara, I want to smack you upside the head."
Yeah. You feel invaded, violated. You feel there's no justice in the world, but believe me, I hear you. Chris, how was that? How was that impersonation of Barbara Frick?
Yes.
How'd I do?
Yeah, I want to smack you upside the head too.
Smack me? Okay. Good. That was what I was going for. So, like, Chris apologizes, and Angel says, "I was bad," and they both walk off.
And it's so obviously insincere on both of their parts.
Yeah. So clearly, here's my issue with this. Aside from how irritating she is, the idea of what she's doing is not inherently bad. Validating children's feelings is always better than yelling, but obviously this is ridiculous the way she's doing this, right? Like,
I wouldn't say validating kids' feelings is the right word. I would say recognizing and acknowledging, but to validate them is like, yeah, okay. I have, you're absolutely correct that when he took your sandwich, you should have punched him in the face. I mean, I totally agree with that.
Well, no. What I meant was more along the lines of, like, I understand your frustration, but you handled it wrong.
Yeah.
Right. Like validating the feeling, but not the action. Yeah. Okay. So, like, yeah, I just sort of meant, like, validating the feeling. The frustration is fair, but the action is not, right? But you can't just say, I hear you.
The frustration isn't always fair either.
True.
So, I mean, you gotta get details before you start making judgments. Yeah. And that she didn't do that.
For sure. No, and she didn't solve anything either. Like, if the kids are coming, and I'm not saying you have to solve your kids' arguments, but you have to at least, if your kids are coming, and I only have the one, so this is me going on hypotheticals, but, like, if your kids are coming to you, there's a reason I only had the one. For this reason alone, I don't have to referee anything, right? Like, if your kids
I've already got one of you. I don't want to eat two of you.
Yeah, and they're fighting, then you have to do one of two things. You either have to resolve that argument, or you have to say, you got to figure this out yourself. But either way, you need to let them know where you stand, right? Like, you need to give them that direction. She doesn't give them any direction. She just says, I hear you, and spouts off a bunch of nonsense. And they're supposed to do what with that? Like, if this is what passes for child psychology, I'd like to have a word with whoever, like, hands these titles down, because, like, that's terrible. That's a terrible way to address this situation. So here's my question. How would you handle it? Because you got more than one. So they come to you. He hit me. She stole my sandwich. He raised his foot. Blah, blah, blah. We're fighting. What would you do? I look at you. I only have the one kid, so she can't fight with anybody but herself. And if she does, that's a different psychiatrist we have to talk to.
Well, I mean, first of all,
put him on the spot here.
did only one kid have a sandwich? Where did the sandwich come from? I mean, there's so many things about the scene that just don't even make sense to begin with, that it's one of those situations where you really can't give an answer to it because there's so much about it that just doesn't make sense, or there's not enough information.
Random nonsensical fight generated for the purposes of the script.
Yeah.
And we're just supposed to that's fair. That's fair.
You know, if they'd both had sandwiches and the one ate theirs and then stole the other ones, then it's like, she
said she was hungry. She says she was hungry.
Okay, so he had a sandwich and she didn't? How did he get the sandwich and she didn't have a sandwich?
I don't know.
Who made the sandwich?
Yeah.
I mean, if he made the sandwich for himself and she said, well, I want a sandwich. And he says, well, there's the stuff, go make it. And she said, no. Okay.
No, but I think he took her. I got to relook at my notes, but let's see. Chris says Angel hit him. Angel says Chris raised his voice. Chris says Angel took his sandwich, and Angel says she was hungry. So I'm guessing she was hungry. He made a sandwich for himself. She took his sandwich, he yelled at her, and then she hit him. That's my order of events, right? In which case, you're right. Like, why didn't she have a sandwich? Did he make the sandwich? In which case, go make your sister a sandwich. Angel, we don't hit people in this house.
Angel, go make your own sandwich.
Angel, go make your own sandwich. That's what I meant to say. Like, Angel, go make your own sandwich. We don't hit people in this house. Chris, next time, make your sister a sandwich. Like, I don't know.
Or
he's
just,
the older
Chris,
one.
next time, just walk away.
Or you are the oh god, I can't believe I'm going to say this because I got this all the time as a kid, but you are the oldest and you need to be the responsible. I hate myself for saying that.
You're turning into your mother.
No. But honestly, he's
your
15
worst
and she's 9.
You've turned into your mother.
Like, he's 15 and she's 9. I'm sorry, but there's a different level of impulse control at both of those ages, and he should know better.
Well, yes, exactly.
Right? Like,
so you just turn around and you walk off, and if she takes your sandwich, you just take it back from her and walk off. You can make yourself another
one. Yeah. She didn't have one in the first place.
You don't let her get away with doing something wrong. You just take your sandwich back and then leave the room.
Well, yeah, I just meant, like, if there's no adult there, right? Like, you take your sandwich, but I don't know. It just
there's
the whole thing
as presented. It's just not. There's it's a contrived
but either way,
situation.
Neither one of them needs to feel that their emotions are validated here. This is a silly fight that siblings have. Like this whole "I hear you" nonsense is not.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and then her response. The arrogant condescension of so-called experts.
It's difficult to explain to civilians. Yeah. She then goes on to explain that children are very complex and they develop a third ear. She then says Angel didn't really want that sandwich and Chris didn't really want justice. They just wanted to be heard. Bull crap. Angel wanted the sandwich. Chris wanted his sandwich back.
That's right.
I think that was a very simple situation. She took his sandwich. He wanted it back. He raised his voice. He didn't hit her because he's bigger than her, and she hit him because she's 9. Like, that's what happened.
And they didn't want to be heard. They just they each just wanted an adult to come down on the other person.
They wanted, if anything, they wanted an adult to intervene in an authoritative way because nobody ever does for them.
Right,
like,
but in the immediate situation, they wanted somebody to intervene in their behalf
and
come down on the other person because I don't like what they did. They're just mean.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want to be heard. And on a larger level, these kids are basically crying out for some sort of punishment and or maybe not even punishment, but some sort of like
guidelines,
boundaries.
Yes.
Boundaries. Like they need an adult to set boundaries because these kids are doing whatever the heck they want all the time. They're getting whatever they want all the time. And no one's ever saying no.
Yeah, it's like there was a deal, I don't know, a couple decades back. And there was this whole movement about schools. This was back before things got weird. And, we need to take the fences down around schoolyards because it makes the kids feel confined. And we want them to feel open and free. And they learned that when they took the fences down and the kids were free, that they tended to group into the center of the playground because they didn't have that boundary presenting a safety barrier around them. That boundary, as you say, that defines, okay, here's where you can go. Beyond this, you can't go beyond this. And guess what? Other people can't come into this area either. So they tended to group in the center of the playground areas because it gave them a sense of safety that was missing when you took the barriers away. That's what these kids need. They need those barriers.
Yeah. What's interesting about that is I went to a bunch of different schools when I was younger. I went to 5 different elementary schools, and at least 2 of them had no fences whatsoever. Mm-hmm. One was out in the country. Like, if you wanted to leave the property, you were on the highway. That's where you went. So, like, there was nowhere to go. So I guess in that sense, they didn't need a boundary. But, like, yeah, I agree with you that, like, psychologically, subconsciously, we need boundaries. Kids need boundaries. They want boundaries. Even if they say they don't, they mm-hmm. want a clear set of rules, what they can and can't do. And yes, they're going to break those rules because they're kids. But, like, these kids have no rules. Nobody ever tells them no. So, they don't need to be heard. They need to be, that. And then, okay, after her nonsense about the third ear, she smugly says, if you were a mother, you'd understand. Punch this woman out.
Yes. Really.
Like, somebody needs, I'm sorry, I don't advocate violence against people very often, but, like, somebody needs to knock this woman out. Like,
well, there's that old saying, that how do you get a mule's attention? First, you hit him upside the head with a 2x4.
Yeah,
you don't do it to be mean. You do it to get their attention. Then after you got their attention, then you can work with them.
Because then Steele says you ought to write a book, and she's like, "What I know, I share." Like, I hate this person. She gets one terrible scene, and she's awful.
She is.
But outside, we've got a giant, hideous RV pulling up to the house, driven erratically by Mildred.
We experience this thing every summer up here.
Oh, I bet you do. You do.
We've got these RV rental places, and we have all these people that come in from outside, and I can drive an RV. I've been driving cars and pickup trucks for 45 years. I can get behind one of those things. And oh man,
you basically just said you basically just impersonated my dad. He drove trucks. He drove buses. He drove anyway, that was my dad. But okay, I will counter that with, we don't get that with RVs here, but what we do get is we have a bridge in the city in London, Ontario, which I like to call the Talbot Street truck can opener. And I call it as such because there are a billion signs, big, yellow, bright yellow signs saying, the clearance height in meters, because we do things that way here. And every year, without fail, at least once, and it's usually a student who's rented a U-Haul or some other truck, every year without fail, because we live close to the university, some moron thinks they can clear it, that their truck can clear it, whereas no other truck could, and gets stuck. And there's dents all in the signs, there's dents in the bridge, there's one year it was a bus that got stuck, it was a coach. Every year. It's always in the news, and the locals, we all laugh. We're like, Talbot Street claimed its first victim. It's without fail, some moron, I can do it, I can do it. And it's always somebody who doesn't normally drive those vehicles, right? Like somebody who's driving a transport, who drives a transport for a living, knows the clearance height of their truck. Well, or at least they should.
You don't know.
I mean, I would say that for the bus driver too, I guess, but there was a bus that got stuck. So maybe I'm wrong, but every year someone gets stuck under there. So yeah, Mildred not knowing how to drive the RV, this tracks for me. Right up over this woman's lawn, and she destroys her flowers, and I honestly go, Mildred, good for you, because she deserved it. So I don't feel bad. Yeah. Steele looks out the window and asks how she feels about sharing her front lawn. Laura looks out the window and says, "You expect to have me," and he says, "You expect to have me travel in that with the bad seed?" And again, here, at this point, there hasn't really been that much contention between him and the kids, except her being "You can get my bags," and being boring at the pizza place. But that's just
annoying,
kind of bratty behavior. It's annoying, but his his venom seems pretty amped up here for like what is ostensibly just an irritating 9-year-old. Like, I don't know. I gave him a tick for parenting, but I'm probably going to take it away in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Because so Laura explains it's self-contained, mobile, and they won't be exposing the kids to strangers. Mildred comes inside, tells Barbara she owes her a few flats of petunias. She tells Steele and Laura that they will have a blast in the RV because it's so cozy and convenient, to which he replies, everyone within swatting distance, which I just kind of like that line.
Yeah, it's a good line.
It's a good one. Laura says they better go before the clowns show up again and calls for Chris and Angel, but only Angel shows up and she's eating an apple. When she asks where Chris is, Angel shrugs. They look throughout the house and the yard, thinking that they got him. When they go back inside, they find him locked inside a closet. Now, here's the thing. Angel does not know that they are being targeted.
True.
Chris figures it out, but
right.
Angel is buying into this whole tour guide nonsense. So as far as she knows, she played a prank on her brother, which, is bratty, but not necessarily worth screaming at her over. So the overreaction that ensues comes more from the fear that the parents had, not the parents, but more from the fear that Steele and Laura had when they thought they lost the kids. And they projected onto her, which is kind of crappy, right?
Right, yeah.
Like, Steele storms out, he yells at her, telling her if she pulls a stunt like that, she won't sit down until she's eligible to retire. Wow. I'm taking his parenting tick back. Because, that is not your child. First of all, whatever your feelings on spankings are, those aren't your kids. You have no right to physically punish them.
That's point number one. And then second of all, even if it was his kids, he jumped to that point pretty fast.
Yeah, that was quick. Like, that, as to coin a Will Ferrell phrase, that escalated quickly. Like,
yeah.
I'm sorry.
I mean, a little bit more to get there.
Yeah, and personally, and I know generationally things were different, right? Like, I was spanked. That was a thing that happened because I grew up in the 80s. So, as far as that goes, that was something I experienced. I have never done that to Kira. I never would. But that doesn't mean that I haven't wanted to. There have been moments where I've just been like, come here.
The thing I think that a lot of people misunderstand is that in this particular case, it's almost being treated as, how to put it, the spanking here is almost being used as a way of venting frustration.
Yes, for sure.
Whereas in proper use, a spanking is used for discipline and teaching, hey, this is not acceptable behavior, and you're going to suffer a consequence so that you learn that this behavior is not acceptable or it's dangerous or whatever. But it's not intended to be as a way to vent your frustration at the kid. And that's where the problem comes in is for too many people, that's how they use it.
Yeah. He's operating out of fear here, actually. Like, to me, this is more
frustration,
fear-based
fear,
response.
whatever, yeah.
Because they almost lost, they thought they had lost Chris. They thought that the clowns had got him, that he'd been taken. So for me, and again, I am not.
Again, it's a matter of him using it as a way to vent, whether it's fear, frustration, anger, or whatever. It's not being used for its proper purpose here, and that's how it's being portrayed as being intended, is not for the proper purpose.
He's lost control, and again, I don't want this to turn into a
parenting seminar.
Personally, because here's the thing, I don't have judgment for people who have used spankings for that purpose. I personally don't. I like the idea of natural consequences, i.e., if you're misusing that toy is going to be removed for a while. There's going to be consequences, but I've never seen a moment where I feel like a physical consequence is necessary unless, and there is an unless, as you said, they've done something dangerous, and in the moment you need to give them that sharp reminder, like they go to touch a stove Or like the one time I came close with Kira, she saw a puppy and wanted to pet it, and the puppy was on the other side of the street, and she like basically lurched out of my hand. She was probably only about, I want to say, like 4-ish. She lurched out of my hand, ran into the road. I had to chase her, and like I grabbed her, and there was a moment where I was like, I want to just give her a smack on the butt to let her know how serious what she did was, because thankfully there was no car there and nothing happened, but like there was a woman walking by who saw it, and it might have been the woman with the puppy, I don't know, but she was like, we had this moment where we locked eyes, and there was that knowledge, like, oh my God, like that was terrifying. So, in that moment, that was a viable response in my head. I didn't go there because I was too busy holding her. I was like, I'm not letting you go now, child, because you're going to run into the street. But like, yeah, like you're right. He's reacting in a way that is more about him than it is about her. And I think that's even said because he yells at her. She shrinks behind Mildred. Mildred says, you're a role model to her. Or to him, sorry. And Angel says, you threatened me. I'm going to have my daddy ruin you, and storms off, which of course is what she would say because she's 9 and she's never had any boundaries, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, she's a brat. She's acting like a brat would, who's never had anybody tell her no. Her behavior is entirely
predictable.
It's predictable. Yeah, I'm not going to say it's reasonable because it's not. But like, if she were raised in a household where boundaries were enforced and consequences were enforced, and like you had loving parents that were maybe making mistakes every now and then, but not like giving in to her every whim, this would not necessarily have happened. Or if it did, she would understand there were consequences and not think, I'm just going to call my dad and he's going to destroy you, right? Like a supervillain. Yeah. So she locks herself in her room. Steele and Laura go and knock on the door. Barb tries the I hear you stuff, and Chris informs her that she went through that 3 psychiatrists back, which I kind of like. Yeah. And then Steele, he keeps going. He's like, you've got until the count of 2. And Laura tells him and this is where Laura gets a parenting tick, okay? Because she says that you need to let her cool down a moment. And then he points out that he's the one who's boiling. And she says, she's a child, you're an adult. Period. Let the kid cool down. Let the kid, she's basically taken herself to her room. It's not her room, but like she stormed off. Give her a minute. The parents need to give themselves a minute. Or in this case, Steele and Laura give themselves a minute. Everybody calms down and we try this again when we're not ready to scream at each other. That's good advice. So Laura gets a tick here, in my opinion. Thoughts?
And then when we sat down and we make sandwiches for a snack in the mid-afternoon, you don't get one because you stole Chris's and ate it. So you've already had yours.
Yes. You've had your, I agree. You've had your sandwich. You don't get a sandwich.
That's right.
But like, you take a pause. Laura's right. You take a pause. And then when you're calmed enough, you go in and, because anytime a parent loses, in my opinion, anytime a parent loses their temper like that, it's because they have allowed the situation to get out of control, right? Like they have not stayed consistent. Their kids' behavior has basically been like, and let's face it, we've all been put to our last nerve and we've snapped. It happens to us all. But like, we've allowed the situation to get to us. And if we want the kids to like recognize those boundaries, we need to try to stay as calm as we can. Sometimes that means walking away for a bit and coming back and saying, okay, you hit him. You need to be in your room for a little bit, or you broke your toy. So I'm taking that away for now. And yes, you can scream and holler and do whatever, but like it's still happening because it's the consequence. So like, yeah,
and no, you're not getting a new toy because you broke yours.
Exactly. You broke your toy. You don't, that's what I mean by natural consequences, right? Like you broke this. So now if you want a new toy, you have to find the money yourself, because I am not buying you another one because you broke your toy, right? Like that's where that goes.
Well, and talking to the conversation between Laura and Steele, Laura says she's the child, you're the adult.
Yeah.
And of course he's sarcastic about it. Thanks for that startling bit of information. And
yeah.
She comes up with a line here a little bit in just a fraction of a second later, says, obviously the child in you is a bit overwhelmed by the child in her, which probably a true statement, but probably not helpful.
Not the right. No.
And you can see that in his response, which is if the child in you takes one more shot at the child in me. But again, like I said earlier, there's this whole level of antagonism between the two of them that really can't be justified
like this feels like it's coming out of nowhere a little bit. Yeah. Like, I get it if they were fighting all the way up, but they weren't, right?
Yeah, and they're using the kids to try to justify this conflict between the two of them when it's really not about the kids.
No, it isn't. And Mildred, I mean, she assures Barb they're very close. She ushers her and Chris out of the room. Steele, meanwhile, says to Laura that she didn't take this job to see how she functions with children. She took it to see how he does. And Laura says, why would I possibly care, before storming away?
Which means that she absolutely does care.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't think he's wrong, but like, is that a bad thing? Maybe. I guess if she didn't tell him that was her true intention behind taking the case, but
yeah, it's
also kind of weird because she's seen him function it was an infant, but still, like, she's seen that he can be nurturing and that he can care for a living person. And also, this is what really kind of, I don't know, bugs me about this, is that this is so artificial, it doesn't count. These are not their kids.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot.
You can't judge that by that.
You can't judge that. Like,
Well, now I'm going to back off on that a little bit. Because if somebody there are things that people will do in handling other people's kids that should be
red
concerning.
flags.
It's like, hello. What? Oh, that's right. I've got this stupid thing on the Mac. You hold up your finger and it does weird things on the screen. Anyway,
I saw that.
If they just want to use corporal punishment for everything,
like Steele, just like I'll hit you till you retire. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
that was quick.
If their method of dealing with everything with these other kids is just corporal punishment on everything and overreaction on everything, then that might be a sign that this person is not ready to be a parent. But in general, I'll agree with you that dealing with other people's kids is totally different than dealing with your own, both good and bad.
Oh, for sure.
So you're right. It's absolutely not a fair test. Like,
these kids have had terrible parenting up until this point. So they are obviously not well-behaved kids. And so they cannot, like, again, I agree with you. You're right. There's red flags. There's things that we should, that are maybe not great indicators. But like, at the same time,
if these were their kids and they had raised them,
they might
and
deal
at
with
this
it
age, their behavior would be totally different.
Yeah, like they might deal with it differently. And I honestly, after Steel, Knuckles, and Glassjaws, and then after what we see with Steele and Laura's sister's kids, I think Steele would be a very patient parent. This seems out of character for him to immediately threaten to smack a child. Like, it feels out of character in the way it felt out of character when he punched Mildred. This does not feel like him. I think Laura is the one that would lose her temper quicker with her own kids, frankly. I don't know why. I don't think she would, again, threaten to beat her children until they can't sit down, but like, I think he'd be more patient and maybe let more roll off him. Like, I think if they had two kids and one was a cherubically faced, sweet little girl, and she was like, Daddy, I broke the TV remote. Like, I think Steele would be more likely to be fleeced than Laura would be.
Yeah, but I think it also depends on what the situation is.
Yes.
Because there's going to be times, I'm sure there were times where I was far more lenient than my wife was, and then there were other times that I was just like, no, and she would have been more like, it's not that big of a deal.
Oh, for sure.
So I would say a lot depends on what it is and how it hits that person. But these are not their kids. So taking this case as a measure to test his ability to deal with kids, is really silly. It's very silly logic. It's not fair. It can't really be used as a fair test. It's kind of like babysitting. Like, babies, they're not your kid. You get to give them away at the end of the day, right? Like, they're not yours. So any consequences are not
long term. So, yeah. So she storms away. Meanwhile, in the room, Angel has found a phone and has called Shelby Haynes. We see her telling Shelby she doesn't want to go to Arizona, certainly not in a tacky old trailer. She asks her to come and pick her up. Shelby tells her she can't do that, but urges her to call and tell her how it's going. Angel hangs up, kind of defeated. And then we see Shelby hang up, and one of the henchmen asks her who was on the phone. And at first, she tries to say no one, and the henchman tells her that it's too late for second thoughts. He grabs her, he tells her he won't hurt the kids, and she caves and says that they're in a trailer and they're headed for Arizona. And at this point, like, this woman is not stupid enough to think that they're not going to hurt those kids.
Well,
right?
no,
Like, she
especially
can't
when
be that
he's
dumb.
hurting her while he
Right?
says,
Like,
well, we're not going to hurt
yeah.
them. Yeah.
So this is willful ignorance on her part. If she really like is telling herself, "Oh yeah, they're not going to hurt him," well, whatever.
I don't think at this point she believes that. I think at this point she knows it's out of control and gone far beyond what she intended, which is, I think, why she initially tried to, it's nobody. It was the wrong number. Yeah. Salesman. They were, trying to sell. They called us about our car warranty,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you. And it's pretty cold considering she raised these kids, or at least looked after them for a significant period of time. That's what we get the sense of, right? So,
right. Yeah.
Eesh.
So
we see the trailer heading down the highway. Laura offers to take over the driving for Steele. He declines, saying he loves the crisp gas fumes and the nalgide. She sits down next to him. She asks him if there's anything he wants to talk about. He says no. Eventually, Chris joins them. Both of them are far too cheerful and happy to see Chris. So he correctly guesses that they're fighting, saying his parents always tried to make time for him when they were fighting. Ouch. Steele tries to insist they aren't fighting. Laura corrects him and says they are. Steele asks where Angel is. Chris says she's sleeping in the back. Steele sarcastically says exhausted from her labors, no doubt. Like, he's being really hard on this kid. And I realize I've been pretty hard on her, but honestly, like, she behaved like a 9-year-old brat. She's not Stalin. Like, he seems to have taken this really personally.
Well, as you said, she's behaving as you would expect a 9-year-old brat who's been spoiled all her life and has never been told no and has been given anything she wants because she's learned she can manipulate people by her face and her attitude. Whiny, whiny, whiny. She's acting exactly as you would expect her to behave.
Yeah. So Chris surprisingly defends her, saying that she's had a rough time and that she was only a baby when their mother took off. Laura looks up. This last sentence has piqued her interest, so she obviously realizes that she has something in common with these kids. Chris tells him that their mother met some guy from Europe, and when he went back, she went with him. He says that she lives in Spain or Portugal. He isn't sure which, but tells us they haven't seen their parents. They haven't seen their mother, in a long time. Mm-hmm. Chris says Angel was only 5 when it happened, and that he was older. Laura guesses 9, and Chris says 10, as if it matters. Yeah. She tells him that she was only 16. Laura is relating here a little too hard. She tries to connect with Chris by telling him she was only 16 when her father left and it hurt a lot, but this kid is A, trying to impress her, and B, trying to tell himself it doesn't matter. And I don't like to sympathize with him because he's super creepy for most of the episode, but like a 10-year-old whose mother just walks out and doesn't even leave a forwarding address or what country she's in, it maybe explains why he doesn't value women much and why he believes every woman has her price.
I think there's a lot more to it than that, but that's certainly a factor.
I think that was maybe a very early lesson in that, women can be bought and their minds can be changed and they just walk away. And like Laura, she's, when he says, yeah, but you're a girl. And Laura says, oh, that matters, does it? And again, she takes this a little personally. Like, yeah, he's a kid and he's trying to maintain this tough facade. And she knows that, right? Like, Chris tries to pretend it doesn't bother him by saying that he's grateful and it made him kind of hip. And Steele condescendingly says, grew up fast, did we? And he says, boy, did I, and winks at Laura, who looks amused again for some reason. So yeah, it was a weird exchange.
In a sense, you could, that last bit there kind of almost gives the impression that he's using the story as a way of manipulating
to get girls. Yeah, like, oh, poor me. And I don't think it started with this conversation. I don't think it started out there, but like, I think once Steele gives him that opening, he's like, oh yeah, I wink?
Well, he's probably also used it before.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I think he started out somewhat genuine in this, in the sense that yes, he was trying to be, oh, it doesn't matter. I'm just, I'm a guy. We just let these things roll off of us. And so it was genuine in the sense that he was genuinely trying to pretend like it didn't mean anything, even though it really did. But then, he saw the opportunity to turn it into something else. The thing about this is, though, is that, when he's talking about it, Laura says, my dad was 16 when he left and it hurt a lot. And I mentioned this in High Flying Steele because in High Flying Steele, it didn't really seem like her dad leaving was that impactful on her. And yet here it is one episode later and it's like, oh, it hurt really bad. It's like, okay, again, how did we get to here from there? The two don't seem to line up for me.
Laura's dad's story, this is frustrating because we've got a bunch of conflicting things that we've heard so far. In the first season, we don't really get much except for her mentioning to Elliot Walsh that she used to dance with her dad, right? Mm-hmm. Beyond that, we don't really get much from her about like what happened with her family, aside from some stuff when her mom shows up, right?
Right.
Then in season 2, the first episode right out of the gate, they have that fight where she talks about how like her dad leaving hollowed her mother out and she doesn't want to become like that. And that's what she's most worried about, right? And then after that, we get the two mentions that we get are both very sort of affectionate in the sense that she talks about like going to the circus with her dad. So like it's kind of ping-ponging back and forth a bit because now she's, and I'm not saying that human emotions aren't complex like that. They are. And there's every chance that she's holding both that hurt as well as those good memories of her father and not really sure how to reconcile the two. Mm-hmm. But when it's episodic like this and we don't have that continuity over the like overlaying it, we still don't know if she even knows where her dad is. Like we don't get the impression it's kind of like Chris where he's like, yeah, my mom's maybe in Spain, maybe in Portugal, I don't even know. Like she's obviously not in contact with him. We get very little here.
The other thing is though that when you've got those, as you say, diverse emotions, the good times. I remember the good times, but then there were these really bad times. I would think, and I'm not saying this from personal experience because I don't know, but I would think that even when you're talking about the good times, there would still be an element of the bad times that kind of comes through in that. And then when you're talking about the bad times, there would still be an element of the good times that comes through in that. It's not like, oh, it's great, it's wonderful, it's happy, and then over here it's the other extreme. There's I would think some overlap there so that even when you're talking about those extremes, there are elements of the other that come through with it. So yes, we had a great time. It's, he always used to take me to the circus, not in a happy, joy way, but in a happy, but kind of almost sad at the same time way. If you know what I mean. I'm not explaining it well.
No, I get what you're saying. I feel like whenever she sort of goes back to those moments where things were good, it's a way of protecting herself a little bit. Because she does talk about, she sounds wistful when she talks about those times. Like those were when things were good and then he left. And almost like he ceased to exist after that, right? Mm. Like that was a different guy. It's almost as if they're two different fathers. The father that she had that was a good father that was present, that took her to the circus and that danced with her, and then the guy that walked away at 16.
But that's what I'm saying is that even in really, the good father, there would be a sense of betrayal because even though she's trying to present it as if she's seeing them as two different characters, she knows they're not. and I don't know. It just seems to me that it's schizophrenic.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if it's like her way of protecting herself, right? Like,
in which case,
I don't know.
She needs to. I think I've said this before. She really needs to see a psychiatrist.
Both of them do. I mean, when you think about where he came from, like, they both have issues with dads. That's for sure. They both have daddy issues. Both Steele and Laura. But yeah, like there's definitely elements I think here where Laura is conflicted about her feelings for her father. And
yeah.
Chris then turns and asks, he's like, tell me straight if they are supposed to protect him. He says, Dad thinks he fools him and he lets him think so, but adds that he has had more cousins with big shoulders and bulging jackets than he knows what to do with, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Right? So as horrible as Chris is, he's not stupid.
Yeah.
And he's figured it out. Laura is honest and tells him that they are private investigators. Chris asks if their dad is up to something dangerous. Steele says not if everything goes the way it's supposed to. And he's like, don't tell Angel. She's just a kid. Right? Which is that part's kind of funny. Steele smirks as they drive by one of the henchmen watching the RV. He closes the open hood of his car, gets in, uses his car phone, and asks the operator for New York City. So obviously that's where Gray Kirk is headquartered. And then we got the red Batman phone that starts flash to flash. Cole answers, and the henchman says his name is Simpson, tells him he just saw them crossing into Arizona, and he knows what to do. Simpson says he has a car waiting. Cole warns him that Gellin has engaged the Remington Steele Investigation Agency, who has a formidable reputation.
I have two questions.
Does it feel like they've earned this formidable reputation, or is this kind of like a Homer Simpson thing where like he's a genius and Homer's running around going, don't.
Well, I have two questions about this. First of all, actually, I guess maybe it's more than two questions. How did the bad guy at the side of the road know which road they were going to take? Because there's multiple ways that you
because there's lots of highways to get into Arizona.
How did they know which RV they were in to look for? Because what Angel had told the secretary was a trailer. Well, a trailer and an RV are not the same thing.
Yeah, they're very different. Yeah.
And I mean, it could, even if they knew it was an RV and not a trailer, it wouldn't have been the only one on the road, assuming they were even on the right road. So there's nothing to really
kids.
There's really nothing to indicate that there was any reason for them to know which vehicle it was in. And then second of all, how did the office bad guy know that it's the Remington Steele Agency? I mean, he's in New York. He's not on the ground in LA. And here Steele Tours shows up to take these kids on a cultural tour. Well, how would the guy in New York know something that the guy in LA, who is his local eyes and ears, how would he know something that the local guy didn't know?
Yeah, that's true. Well, Gray Kirk, they do get stuff done. So I'm just going to go with that. They are the company that gets stuff done. So they're getting stuff done. Why are you questioning the fact that they're getting stuff done?
I just don't understand what the stuff is. That's
no, me, the stuff. It's this stuff, the stuff of the stuff.
Saying the same thing over and over again doesn't explain what, it's like the dictionary that uses the word it's supposed to be defining in the definition. Yeah. It's like, no.
Like that episode of Schitt's Creek where they're trying to make a recipe and David is told to fold the cheese by Moira. And he's like, how do you do that? And she's like, you fold the cheese. And he's like, okay, but what do you mean by, I don't know, David, you just fold it, and they go on this, the whole skit plays out this way. And that kind of reminds me of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, somehow they know they get stuff done. They're getting stuff done. So that's it. So he hangs up the red Batman phone, and then the black phone rings as he adds that he suggests that no one is left he adds that no one is left to comment on the kid's disappearance. So he basically tells him to kill everybody. And then he answers the black phone. Now, here's the question that I have about these phones. Because the person on the other end of the line is the senator. And the first time we saw him call the senator, he did so on the white phone. So is this okay? I'm trying to get the purpose of the colors here because,
it's a color TV show. It's not black and white.
But like, is the white phone meant to call the senator, and the black phone is to receive calls from the senator, and the red phone is to call his minions? Or like, why does he have 3? If he can scramble the line with his little scrambler dealie, then what the heck does it matter which phone he uses?
It's a color TV show. We've got to have color.
So you got nothing, is what you're saying.
I got nothing.
Okay, cool. I thought there might have been like some explanation that I was missing.
No.
He just likes his phones to look like Skittles and taste the rainbow. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Which you actually, I think have we talked about this before? How Skittles actually don't have any different flavors.
Yes. How our brain fills in. Oh, it's red, so it tastes like red. Yeah.
Oh, we smell cherry, so it must taste like cherry. Yeah. Anyway, okay.
So yeah, he answers the black phone. It's the senator. We only hear his half of the conversation, but obviously the senator's worried. Cole assures him that they are in complete control of the situation, and that adds it's not something he needs to know about. So,
and go back to your ethics committee while we're talking about doing things that are unethical and illegal and immoral and all this other stuff. Yeah.
I love that ethics communities even exist politically. Like, that's funny to me. Anyway, so he tells them that they aren't interested in He tells them they aren't interested in preventing Gallon from testifying. They want him to blow up the government's case. And he assures the senator they know how to accomplish that. He then tells him to go back to his ethics committee meeting before hanging up. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So then we see the RV coming down the highway and a nondescript burgundy sedan pull out onto the road behind it, start following them. Laura, for once, notices the car, points it out to Steele, who comments on how nondescript it is. She wonders why it doesn't pass them and says that she's becoming a raging paranoiac. Is it paranoia if they're really out to get you?
No, it's not. Paranoia is the unreasonable fear that people are out to get you, or the irrational fear that people are out to get you. When they're out to get you, you're not paranoid.
They legitimately know that they are being hunted, so she's not being a raging. If anything, she's finally like being aware of her surroundings.
Yes, so, situational awareness, they call it.
Yeah. Steele admits they are vulnerable in this bouncing billet, to which Laura adds that all anybody would need to do would be to shoot at the tires and they would be helpless. Wouldn't that be the case in any vehicle?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, cool. Just like...
Now, it might be a little more hazardous in a vehicle that has the weight sitting up higher like this one does, as opposed to like a sedan. But yeah, I mean, in either one, you blow out the tires and it's not going to end well.
Cool. All right. Steele tells her an anecdote about John Ford directing Stagecoach. I've seen that movie. He claims that when asked why they didn't just shoot the horses, Ford replied, because then we wouldn't have a movie.
Isn't that a great commentary on how movies and televisions ignore reality when it interferes with their fantasy version of reality?
Yeah, this whole script is a good indication of that.
Anyway.
And also, and you're going to hate me, but there is a Buffy episode that takes place in an RV, and they're fleeing from bad guys, and they're in an RV, and they get chased by men on horseback. This is why I thought of this, because they literally get chased by these, they call themselves the Knights of Byzantium or something like that, because this is demonic stuff and whatever, and Willow says, "Don't hurt the horsies," and then Giles leans over and he's like, Buffy leans over to Giles and says, "Aim for the horsies." So he starts like trying to hit the horses. So that just made me think of, because then we wouldn't have a movie, but like they hear gunshots. Oh, and later on in the episode when they ditch the RV, because of course they do, one of the other characters says, "Do you have a different plan? One that doesn't involve pointy swords and a Winnebago?" And that just also hit me here. It's like, do we have another plan? One that doesn't involve an RV? But Laura tells him, not for the first time, someone didn't see the movie. So, yeah. Steele tells the kids to stay down. Laura laments the lack of pickup in the RV. Steele suggests she try to bump and run. Laura attempts to run the car off the road. Doesn't really work. And she wonders how long they can keep this up. Steele says it's only 200 more miles to Phoenix. Laura sees a truck coming. She pulls out into the oncoming lane with the car behind her. Mm-hmm. She plays chicken with the truck, pulls out of the way at the last second, The car drives off the road into a ditch where it explodes. I'm assuming you've got some stuff to say about this, so I'm just going to let you take it from there.
Even the notorious and I think unfairly maligned Ford Pinto wouldn't just blow up in a rollover accident. I'm sorry.
Honestly, not where I thought you were going to go with that, but okay.
Well, you were expecting to make a comment about the truck driver and just plowing straight ahead?
You'd have, actually, the fact that they just endangered that poor truck driver's life.
Well, there's
by
that
pulling
too,
out
yeah.
in front of him, right? Because if he had tried to pull off the road, his truck would have rolled. If he tried to like move into the other lane or slam on the brakes, like any movement, plowing ahead probably was the only thing he could do.
Yeah. Well, first of all, he had a cab over, which means that there's no engine in front of him to give any kind of protection. So it's just straight into the cab where he's at.
Yeah.
So yeah, it would not be a pretty sight. He might have tried to drive off the shoulder, but yeah, one of the rules about truck driving is that you don't, how to say it? It's not that you don't want to try to avoid accidents, but you have to keep in mind that in trying to avoid an accident, you may actually cause a more disastrous accident. And so, for example, if a deer or a moose or something runs out in front of you, you don't slam on the brakes and jerk the steering wheel. You take it out. You just, you try to slow down as much as you can safely, but you're going to hit it. And you don't try to avoid hitting it because you
that's what we're told in driver's ed. Don't ever stop for an animal. Like, unless there's nobody behind you and you can safely stop. Like, if there's cars around you, you have to hit it, because otherwise you're going to hurt somebody else, or you're going to stop and someone's going to hit you from behind. Right. So like, she pulls out in front of this truck, and this poor truck driver is seeing this RV coming straight at him. Okay. And then they yank out of the way at the very last second, and he almost hits the car, which obviously pulls off the road and then explodes. Yeah. So this poor guy's probably thinking he's responsible for this like random car getting like, holy crap, Laura, you just netted him years of therapy. Like,
well, I don't know. I would be more along the lines of saying that the truck driver's saying, what a bunch of idiots. Why are they even allowed on the road? They got what they deserved.
Okay, fair. But like, I don't know. Like, if I thought I caused, even if it was their fault, or if I thought I was in any way involved in an accident where the car blew up, I'd like, crikey, Laura, like that was really stupid. That was a stupid move.
It was perfect TV's move, though. Perfect TV
it was a great TV move. It's true. But yeah, holy cow. Laura's in shock, to be fair, right afterwards. And so she feels the urge to lie low for a while. Yeah. So we find them in a trailer park. Steele has no idea how to attach the sewage line. Laura suggests he test it, but he is less than enthusiastic with the idea. And Angel comments, some tour guide can't even fix the potty. He reads the directions. He's trying to tighten it when he's helped out by a woman who seems to be a friendly RV nut. She asks if it's their first.
There was a line. There was a line in the script that didn't make it.
Yeah, because I haven't read the script for this one. What was it?
She says, oops, I wouldn't do that yet. And, she bends down and makes a couple of adjustments. And then her next line would have been, guess what would have hit the fan?
Why was that taken out? That's a great line. That's a shame. That would have been funny. Oh, Mrs. Niemeyer, you go. Oh, that's funny. So yeah, she introduces herself as a friendly RV nut, and then asks if it's their first time. Laura says, likely our last. And she says, oh, you get used to it, to which Steele replies, not if I can help it, which is, I like this exchange. Like, this is good. This is good banter here. She introduces herself and her husband as Bonnie and Bo Niemeyer. Bo looks at the kids and says, fine looking kids you got there. And Bonnie says they're too young to have kids that age, which is only sort of true in the sense that if they, had a child really young, but
some people do.
Like some people do. So it's one of those things that's like, it's very unlikely they have kids this age, but 9 years old maybe, but not 15.
Well, there are ways, because
True.
my youngest daughter has 2 kids that were adopted, and the age gap between my daughter and her oldest is a little bit not enough.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, she would have had to
There's
been.
there's actually a girl on TikTok, and I don't know why this made me think of it, but she is in a relationship with a guy who had a child very, very young in a previous relationship. And so like there's like they are the same age, but like her and her partner are the same age, but like the child is really close to her age because they're young.
Mhm.
They're both young. So like anytime she goes to a doctor or whatever, she has to explain like, yes, this is because she's got a baby as well. And there's like a huge, anyway, it's a funny exchange. So,
Yeah, well, I can I can top that. One time my daughter was taking her girls to the airport, and they were going to go flying somewhere. And she was, let's see, she would have been 19 or 20 at the time, I think, roughly. And she gets to the airport with her 2 daughters, and she's at the ticket counter doing the thing, and the lady at the ticket counter picks up the phone and calls for assistance with 3 unaccompanied minors.
Oh.
And my daughter looks at her and says, "I'm the mother."
Ouch, ouch, ouch.
But you also have to understand that my daughter, if she was wearing platform shoes, she might stand 5'1", after a heavy meal with soaking wet, maybe 100 pounds.
And when you're short, you're immediately assumed to be younger. I know. So, and my daughter, the opposite, because she's only 7, but she looks like your average 10 or 11-year-old. People assume she's older than she is, which it worries me for the future.
Anyway.
Yeah. So they Bo claims that they have 6 kids, but we never see them because obviously they're lying.
Right.
And says that Bonnie is the best baker and just made 2 pies. He invites the children over to have some. He then adds that it's key lime, which is Angel's favorite. Laura tries to dissuade them, saying it's too close to dinner. Chris backs her up, calling her cousin Laura, to which Angel replies, "She's not my cousin." The Niemeyers take no heed and invite Angel over and after dinner for pie.
Did you catch it that when she says the key lime pie and Angel says it's my favorite, Steele kind of gives Laura a look like,
Yeah, he does clock that for sure.
She doesn't. He does.
Yeah. Well, she does comment on it after because Angel calls him a tyrant before storming off.
Yeah.
Laura asks Steele how he reads the Niemeyers, and he seems suspicious, pointing out it's Angel's favorite pie. So he does point it out. Here's what strikes me as odd, and maybe, I don't know. She says key lime is rather esoteric for a trailer park as well as a 9-year-old. Is it? I didn't think it was that weird.
Before this episode, or before Remington Steele, before I saw this, the first time years ago, I'd never heard of key lime.
Really?
And key lime pie. I still really don't even know what it is. I've never had it, as far as I'm aware.
It's like lemon meringue. It's like a jelly type lime flavored. I don't particularly care for it, but I always associate it with old people, which is why, to me, it would make total sense for an older couple like the Niemeyers to have key lime pie that they just baked.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's esoteric for a trailer park. I don't know if it's esoteric for a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
I've never had it.
Anyway, but
I would
like.
I don't even think I've ever seen it on a menu.
If they wanted to bring out a pie that is sort of like random and like strange for a child, I would think something like boysenberry or like rhubarb. Something
rhubarb
that
would definitely be, yeah.
Right,
Pecan
like
pie
that would be something. Yeah, Yeah.
Most kids, I don't
Something
think
like
pecan.
right? Like,
Yeah.
key lime doesn't strike me as being like, anyway. Laura says
Or
that
mincemeat.
if they're working... Sorry.
Because it gets me too.
Don't even start with me. Don't. Yeah, no, gross. Laura says if they're working for Greykirk, they need to find a way to keep Angel away from the pie. They don't even know where the kids are at this point. The kids just... Angel stormed off. Nobody went after her. Where's Chris? Like,
oh, kids. Oh yeah, we had some kids around here somewhere. What do we do with them?
They just let them out of their sight. Like, if they really think the Niemeyers are working for Greykirk, then shouldn't they know where the kids are?
Yeah, really.
It's 6:00. Do you know where your children are? Like, or
hey,
you know,
it's not
someone
their
else's.
kids, so they don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, that's fair. Like, yeah, okay. Steele asks how, and Laura points out she's only a child. Steele says, "Are you sure about that?" And Laura says, "This is not their most demanding assignment." Like, this again feels very weird to me. Like, does he really feel that powerless around this little girl? Like, it's not that hard to tell somebody no.
It's not hard to tell somebody no, but sometimes it's hard to stand by it. You know,
Maybe.
Well, I mean, we've all seen it. The mother in the store with the kid who's misbehaving and demands, "I want this, I want this, I want this."
I've seen that a lot.
And it's. I said no.
Yeah.
I said no. I've said no 47 times, and I still haven't done anything about it. But I'm still saying no.
Well, or they just give in at the end of the transaction.
Well, that's basically what they're doing is by not standing by their word and just continually saying no and not actually enforcing it. They're giving in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not their most demanding case. So it's
I find
out of
that
line.
like it feels like it's harder to do that though. Like, I would think it's harder with your own kids to stand your ground because you got to go home with them. Whereas with someone else's kids, you say no, and like eventually, again, you're going to give them back. So, you know, there's a time limit. They can have a tantrum, but it's only going to last so long, and then you return them to their parents and they have to deal with them. Right? Whereas like with your own kids, like that mother in the supermarket is probably like losing her crap because that kid's been bugging her all flipping day, and she's just losing her, you know, she knows she's going to go home and she's going to hear, I want, and she's going to just, yeah. So like, I don't know, I just think it would be.
There are exceptions to that rule though. My little sister, when my niece was, I don't know how old she was, she would have been single digits or maybe, yeah, probably had to have been single digits. She was in the store with my niece, and apparently my niece was doing that thing and you know, got mad and started throwing a temper tantrum. So I guess my sister got down on the floor and threw a temper tantrum with her, and it so embarrassed her.
I have done that. Kira has started stomping, and I've stomped with her. I don't care what people think of me, but it struck her. Well, she started laughing. She wasn't embarrassed by it. She thought it was funny. But like either way, it broke the tension, and it stopped that particular behavior from happening. It distracted her enough that she didn't keep going with it. But like, I don't know. It just seems to me it's easier to put your foot down when it's someone else's child than it is your own, because your own child, you still have to deal with them all night and all day, every single day, 24/7. I'm not saying you don't enforce boundaries, but like, I don't get why he's so helpless here.
There's more opportunity for you to get frustrated and want to say, okay, I'm just going to give in on this one. Yes, you're absolutely right.
Is this the hill worth dying for? Right. Whereas with Steele, it's like, they only got to get to Phoenix.
Yes.
You know, like lock the kid in the trailer for all, you know, whatever. But like, you just tell her, no, you're not going to the Niemeyers for pie. They're strangers, stranger danger.
Yeah.
Done. Right. Like, I don't know. And then so Laura points out it is not their most demanding assignment. Steele points out that he can't remember the last time they bickered this much. Laura says that by this time tomorrow, they will be off the case, and rather haughtily says, imagine yourself as a full-time. This is a bit of a low blow on her part, right? Like, yeah, he's not been great with this, but neither is she. And he correctly points out it takes two to bicker, a daddy bickerer and a mummy bickerer.
Yeah, you know, there's another problem I have, and this trailer park kind of brings it to light. What's taking them so long to get from Los Angeles to Phoenix?
Yeah, it's like 3 hours, right?
5.5 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it easily in less than a day in a car. And in an RV,
San Diego.
Let's say that you go a little slower because it's an RV, 10 hours. Worst case scenario. They've got to be intentionally dragging themselves. Isn't that more of a danger? I mean, it allows them to be in these types of situations where they're more exposed. I don't get it.
Yeah, it's weird.
There's no need for them to be at this trailer park.
Well, yeah, she says she wants to lay low, but like, do they have to spend the night? Like, that seems like you get to Phoenix and maybe you lay low there. Find somewhere if you've got time to kill, right? But yeah, no, I agree with that. And then like he makes a comment. He correctly points out it takes two to fight. And then she says smugly, I haven't lost my temper, which again, like this is, I don't know where it's coming from that she's trying to one-up him so much. Like it feels very out of character for him to resort that quickly to threatening violence against a child, but it feels equally out of character that she's suddenly going, well, I haven't lost my temper. Like, okay, but you also haven't told Chris that his behavior is inappropriate. And Steele correctly points out that she's not fooling anyone with her treacly tones and frozen smiles.
Yeah, it's another one of these episodes that you almost have to say it's not part of the series in the sense that these characters are not the characters that we've seen.
True. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and then she loses her temper and says she's not competing with him; he's competing with her. She then says she just had the most awful feeling and it's all his fault and she wants her mother, which I do kind of like. So we get another scene change. Angel's eating a huge bowl of ice cream and it's apparently her 5th helping of fudge ripple. Do they want this child throwing up all night? Because that's what's going to happen. Well, that's not going to be pretty. That's a small RV.
Yeah.
Like,
she seems to be the only one eating it.
Yeah.
She's probably gone through almost that half gallon by herself.
Oh my God. That would be so gross. Like, I'd feel so terrible afterwards. And then she says, are you bribing me? And Steele admits he is. And she says she's going to bed. She's holding her stomach as she does so. So obviously, yeah. Laura says she's going to get some fresh air after hugging Angel goodnight and giving a smug look in Steele's direction. He begins to clean up, and Chris asks if he does well with women. Steele says it's hard to say, and Steele continues saying that he did pretty well with the clowns, which this has all been the same day.
Mm-hmm.
It's another one of those like weird realizations that all this stuff has happened in the same day.
Yeah.
Yeah. He asks if women like heroes. Steele brushes it off with another non-committal answer. Chris then asks him what line he uses with women. And Steele, like, neither one of these people are willing to actually have a conversation with this teenage boy who is clearly in need of some guidance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and he's clearly looking up at Steele as a role model, seeing that Steele is, a good-looking man who he presumes has experience with women. This would be a good time for Steele to say, I don't use lines to get women. He kind of does it, but like to take it one step further and to say, like, it's not important how many women you are with. It's not important to use a line. What's important is to get to know them and to form relationships based on respect and not try to basically let this kid think that all that matters is how many women he's gotten with, kind of thing, right? Like,
well, to kind of throw your own words back at you here a little bit, and I don't mean this in a cruel or negative or derogatory way. These aren't his kids. And he may just feel like, not my place. I'm just going to sidestep the issue as best I can. It's not my job to be his father. He's got a father. He wants to go talk to him. He needs to talk to him. I'm just backing away from the subject.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you on that. I just think, like, Chris then asked how old he was his first time. And I can see him not wanting to answer this because he's uncomfortable, but yeah, I don't know. How old do you think he was? I don't think he ever says.
No, he just says, it was such a personal experience, we promised never to talk about it.
Yeah.
Which,
Again,
that's obviously a dodge.
So maybe the better way to handle this would be to say, Chris, I understand you've got a lot of questions. It isn't my place to answer them. Maybe you should talk to your father. Because, by not saying anything, he's doing the same thing Laura is and just pretending the conversation doesn't exist, which is not helpful.
Or maybe even worse, seemingly condoning what Chris is thinking.
Yeah, exactly. That it's okay to use a line that, the more women, the better, whatever other stuff that Chris has seen from his dad, clearly, because this is, yeah.
Yeah.
We then see the door open. He goes outside to join Laura. She says he hopes that they have dulled her passion for key lime pie. He says they have, and that she's not completely impossible once you get to know her. Laura says you can say that about a lot of people. She admits that she doesn't know what's gotten into her on this case, so at least she's aware of it. But she blames it all on the Johansons. She says they lived next door to her when she was a teenager. She describes a family that seemed perfect with a white picket fence that never fought. I love Steele's response. How long before the mass murder?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you can understand where he's coming from.
He's not wrong. Yeah. Because this doesn't exist, right?
Because that's how you usually expect these stories to go.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a Stephen King thing,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So he says, how long before the mass murder? And she says, as far as she knows, they lived happily ever after. She says she assumes the kids have white picket fences and that they also never fight. She admits the year her father left, she couldn't look at them for 6 months. And Steele correctly tells her that that's not family life, even though he doesn't have any experience being, given. And this is probably the first time he's admitted to her that he was bounced around from place to place, I think.
To her,
Pretty sure. Yeah, every other time it's been talking to someone else, right? He says a family that doesn't argue can't be flesh and blood. And he prefers flesh and blood. So
can I jump in? Despite the fact that we have all these questions about the circumstances of Laura's father leaving, this from her seems to suggest that prior to his leaving, there were a lot of raised voices between mother and father.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's what she's focusing on as she's telling this.
They didn't fight.
They were perfect. They never fought. They didn't raise their voices. Their kids probably have never raised their voices to their kids. That's what she's focusing on. To her, this is weird.
And that's maybe why she's been so reluctant to raise her own voice towards Chris and Angel, which again is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just frozen smiles and acquiescing to their every whim doesn't work either, right? You can't.
There's an in-between.
Any parent that's ever said, I'm never going to raise my voice to my child. Okay, sure. Good luck with that one. Let me know how long that lasts, right? You're going to try, but you're going to fail. You're just going to fail. It's going to happen, right? And which is what Steele is saying. Anybody who thinks that fights don't happen is silly. And what Laura witnessed was obviously the outward facade of a family that she had no idea what went on behind closed doors.
Right.
And behind closed doors, they fought. Of course they fought. But
maybe their fights were not the yelling kind, but the silent kind.
Yeah. Well, and if we think about the decades, right? This is the 80s, right? And she's 27. So we do the math. This would have been late 50s, early 60s. Am I doing the math right?
60s. Yeah.
Yeah. So this whole concept of a nuclear family and gender roles being very specific and divorce being such a stigma and all that other stuff, the Leave It to Beaver, those TV families that were outwardly perfect. Maybe the Johansons had that facade or had that, mom doesn't raise her voice. Mom doesn't talk back because that's her job and dad has his job and everybody has his job. They were probably miserable, but on the surface, it looked great. And to Laura, you're right. I think she did grow up in a household with a lot of raised voices, which is probably why she's so reluctant to raise her voice to Chris or Angel, and probably why she reacted so strongly when Steele raised his. But at the same time, jumping from 0 to I'm going to smack you so hard you can't sit down until you retire is also not good. So
Yeah.
we're on two very, very different spectrums here.
Yes.
Of what not to do. So
Anyway.
he suggests they go and check on Angel. And when they do, they find that she snuck out the back window. I can't understand how this kid, how is she going to fit key lime pie into her stomach?
Well,
at this point,
before she gets over there to the key lime pie, my question is, how does she get out with anyone knowing? Because
because they would have had to.
If she'd climbed out the window and jumped to the ground, from what I can see, it was about a 6 foot or 1.8 meter drop.
Yeah.
Now they would have heard her. She would have let out a cry when she hit the ground, because that would have probably hurt her a little bit. They would have heard, or even if she didn't hurt herself, they would have heard her hit the ground. I mean, you don't make that kind of a jump and not make any noise at all. So it's like,
yeah, I agree. Well, wait, is there a ladder on the back? Because there's a ladder on the back.
On the back, but she didn't go.
Didn't she?
There's
go
no
out
window out the back. The window is on the side.
So okay. Yeah, that makes no sense. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. They would have heard it, but they didn't. So we're just going to hand wave that.
Yes. Well, keep your hand handy.
Sure. So yeah, they split up to find her. Steele accidentally knocks on a trailer in which the people inside are getting intimate, which I find very funny. I thought this was a family.
I'm sorry, I thought this was a family camp.
Yeah, it's a good one. Laura and Chris find the Niemeyers and see that they are getting ready to leave. Chris says he'll handle it, and he attacks Bo. Laura gets him off and tries to apologize, which I'm assuming she's attempting to steal. Or I'm assuming she's hoping that they are still legitimate and not, bad guys. Mm-hmm. But obviously, Bonnie comes out with a gun, tells him to get inside. Laura urges Chris to do as he says. And inside, Laura sees some unfinished key lime pie on the table and asks if she added something to the recipe, obviously drugging Angel. Steele finds the RV just as it drives away, dislodging the sewage hose as it does so. Now, is this where I need to wave my hand? Or
No.
Oh, okay. All right. Because I don't know anything about a sewage hose, but I would think that if sewage hose was hooked up, stuff would come out of it. But
well, not necessarily. I wouldn't think necessarily, because it would depend on if somebody was sending something down at the time.
Well, okay, fair. Steele jumps on the back ladder and climbs up to the roof of the RV as it drives away. He crawls to the front, leans over to press his face against the windshield. Also stupid. This is stupid. Is he trying to get everybody in the RV? Okay. Is he trying to get them all killed?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a tried and true bit, in movies, that the guy leans down over from the top of the roof into the windshield in the driver's vision and blocks it so that they're forced to stop because they can't see.
Yeah.
My problem is that what happens next? Bo slams on the brakes.
And Steele goes flying off.
Except he doesn't.
Yeah.
What's keeping him up there? There's nothing up there for him to. There's nothing up there. Yeah, sure, force of will. There's nothing up there for him to secure himself to in the front of the vehicle. So there's this basic concept in science and physics called I don't remember what it is called now, but basically that objects in motion tend to remain in motion.
Yeah.
And he would have remained in motion.
Yeah, he would have. He would have flown right off that RV. I agree. So Bo screeches to a stop. Somehow Steele does not fly off. He gets out of the RV with his gun. He walks around it trying to find Steele, looks around the back just as Steele somehow grabs his legs from. How did he get underneath?
That was another question. How did he get down so quickly without being hurt without getting hurt in the process?
Good to know we're on the same page. Yeah. Bo drops the gun. Again, there's your thing you hate the most, dropping the gun. Steele rolls around, standing up, begins to fight him. Bonnie tries to poke her head out. Laura hits her over the head with a pan and punches her and disarms her. And then we get Bo and Steele continuing to fight. Steele knocks him out. Laura pokes her head out and tosses him the gun, congratulating him again, throwing guns around. He does the same for her. So, yay.
Let's just throw those guns like they're toys. Oh, yeah,
sure,
that's right. They're fakes. We can do that.
To be fair, neither one of them have much experience with guns, considering the agency gun is always hidden somewhere and they can't find it. So.
That's true. That's true.
Laura goes into the back and finds Angel asleep. She wakes her up. Angel says hi in a voice that sounds very much like a scared child. And this is probably the first time we see Laura honestly comfort her. She holds her close and like we get that facade drop a little bit where she's sort of like cuddling her. A sheriff's car arrives. 2 police officers get out. Laura tells them they have attempted kidnappers in the RV. Steele shows them to where he has Bo and Bonnie tied up in the closet, citing all the conveniences. First of all, how are they able to trust that the police are actually police and not working for Graykirk? And if that's the case, we know they are police. How are the police to trust that the Niemeyers aren't the parents? And Steele and Laura aren't the kidnappers. Like, they have their word and nothing else.
I would say that as far as the police officers go and the possibility of them working for Graykirk, these are local, small town cops, and so they're probably not
on the payroll.
Yeah, they probably don't have any connections to Graykirk. But
my question is, how do they know they're actually cops? Like, maybe they're henchmen dressed up as police.
Well, I would presume that it's because Laura and Steele called the cops, and so they responded. I mean, it's like, if you call for you use your app to request an Uber ride, and the app says your ride will show up in 5 minutes, and they're driving a blue Toyota Corolla, and in 5 minutes a blue Toyota Corolla pulls up. Pretty good chance that that's your ride.
Is that your car? Is that what you drive?
No.
Okay.
No, but I mean, if somebody says this, and this are going to happen in this time frame, and it does, chances are that that's what it is. And so since they had probably called the cops themselves, and then the cops show up looking for them specifically, I think it's a pretty safe bet. But your question about, well, how do they know that they're not the parents? Yeah, they don't, and they wouldn't probably just be they probably just wouldn't be allowed to go wandering off.
Yeah.
Afterwards.
Okay, we're going to take these children now. Bye-bye. Here's kidnappers.
Yeah,
see ya.
No. No, you're staying. We're going to have a little talk about this and get it all sorted out and figure out, Yeah.
So we got a scene change. Cole is in his office on the black phone. He's not as composed as he normally is. He's trying to find out specifically when Gallon is set to testify. You'd think they would already know this. And also, is this not a matter of, couldn't you just call the courthouse?
That's a good question.
Couldn't you just call the courthouse and say, like, hi, I'd like to know when Gallon versus the state of whenever is on the docket. I'm a material witness, or make up something. And they'd be like, because it's not exactly like this is like classified material. This is a court case that's going to be commented on by the press and stuff. So
there's certain protocols I'm sure that the courts would follow as far as disseminating information to people who just simply call up and ask for it. But given the nature of what we're supposed to believe the case is, it could be that they have a witness whose name has not been entered into the paperwork at this point.
Okay, fair.
But even if it was, I mean, the chances are that if you called up the court and just asked for this information, they'd say, no, this is not how this works. If you're involved in the case, you will be told by the appropriate individuals what information you need to know. And our job is not to be information police.
Fair enough. It just seems like such an innocuous thing to like freak out about. But he wants to know. He says a man with a rifle is standing around for days on end is likely to attract attention, implying he intends to hire a sniper. Days on end? I thought this was like the next day.
Well, but he supposedly doesn't know when.
Oh, okay. So he doesn't even know the day?
But also, is that the kind of thing you want to say over an unsecured line? He doesn't have his little doohickey on it.
It's not unsecured. He's using the black phone.
Yes.
I guess can assume means something.
Because he doesn't need the thingy on the black phone.
Because, yeah, exactly.
He's only got it for when he uses the white phone. Yes, got it.
Yeah.
Silly me.
Yeah. So the senator is obviously having second thoughts, and Cole agrees that it's messy, but he reminds him that Gallon plans to name him as the chief recipient of Greykirk's largesse. Again, no specifics here, but whatever. Another pause, and he asks him to at least try. And then another pause. He says the next time they buy a senator, he will insist the purchase price include a backbone before slamming the phone down. Which I like the fact that even the bad guys are ticked off at the politicians not keeping their promises. Yeah. I appreciate that.
Yes.
So yeah, the door opens and a woman shows several men in. Two of them, this is Mrs. Trout again.
Mm-hmm.
There's like four men, but I guess two are just henchmen because they don't come in the room. The other two are Mr. Jackson and Mr. Ross, which we've established are Gallon's henchmen. Right. She leaves, and the other two men stay outside the room. Cole sits down in front of Mr. Jackson and Mr. Ross. He lets them know that he knows they accompanied Gallon to Phoenix and that he's willing to pay $100,000 to each of them for the exact time he arrives at the courthouse. So yeah, there's good money involved here. Mr. Ross insists he doesn't know anything, and Cole opens his briefcase and addresses Mr. Jackson, saying that he should pay close attention to this exchange. Pulls out a gun, shoots him, which obviously scares Mr. Jackson enough to nod when he asks him if he comprehends that exchange. So,
two things. First of all, again, with the magic silencers.
Yeah, I thought of that.
The second thing is, when Ross says, well, I don't have any idea when he's showing up, and Cole says, well, I think you do. No, actually, he probably doesn't.
He didn't tell Miss Haynes either. Like,
that's right.
He didn't tell anybody where he was going or when he'd be back or anything. Like, nobody had that info. So,
yeah, I mean, it would be the kind of thing that you wouldn't just be blabbing around to everybody, and certainly not.
By the way, I'm testifying at exactly 10 a.m. I'm like,
and you wouldn't be giving that kind of information to, I'll say, low-level employees, which, I mean, they're obviously these guys are entrusted somewhat with Gallon's safety and security, but he didn't take them with him for a particular reason. He didn't need them. He didn't want them. And so, no, they're not going to know. And he wasn't sure he could
trust them.
They're not going to know. So Cole's presumption that they do know and they're just simply holding out is... no, doesn't work.
Yeah. So we see the RV driving down the road. Inside, Steele has Angel on his lap, and she's steering. Not sure how that happened, but he tries to adjust the wheel. She slaps his hand away, only to almost drive them off the road a second later. So he removes her and says it's his turn. She calls him a coward and walks away. I don't know. Angel's growing on me. Meanwhile, Chris isn't eating, and when Laura questions him on it, he asks her when she's going to tell him what a jerk he was. Laura asks when she's supposed to, and Chris admits he screwed up, basically saying he could have gotten them killed. He says he was pretty stupid, and Laura generously says he was brave. Now, again, this starts out nice enough. Like, there's a point, let me know if you think the same way, but there's a point where she has a perfect opening here. She sits down beside him and says that
first mistake.
He was trying to save it. Yeah. She should have sat down across from him. I agree. Yep. And then she says, you were trying to save your sister. Chris, I think he accurately admits that he was also trying to impress her. I do think he was trying to save Angel.
Sure.
He's shown he is protective of his sister, but he says, I was also trying to impress you. Laura gently says
two birds, one stone. Yeah.
Yeah. Laura gently says she knows. He's relieved that she doesn't think he's a jerk. And then he says he really likes her. She says, I like you too. And then he puts his hand on her shoulder and he says, like, and then she says, like a lot before walking away. This is the moment, Laura. Like, this is where you say, I like you too, but I'm far too old for you, Chris, and you need to be pursuing girls your own age and treating them with respect, or at least,
or say something a little bit, say something a little bit condescending, like you're a sweet kid.
Yeah.
You know,
you're a sweet kid.
Ooh.
Yes.
Yeah. That would hurt. Yeah. But it kind of gets the point across.
Yeah. Like, she doesn't say anything to dissuade him. And then she says, like a lot. Like, this poor kid's sitting there thinking he's got a chance. Like,
let's double down on the wrong thing to say. Yes.
Yeah, I like you too. I think you're a sweet kid. Even if she said, I think you're a sweet kid, but I'm involved, right? Make him think that maybe he had a shot, but she's like anything but that. Like,
Yeah.
You know? So this is the, I think the point where she probably really should have doubled down and at least dissuaded him somehow. But she doesn't. She just kind of like ignores it. She goes up to Steele at the wheel and says, and he says the hearing's at 10. Or sorry, she says the hearing's at 10. He comments that they're early, and she says she's not so sure. She tells Steele that Angel called her father's secretary. Shouldn't that information have been conveyed earlier than this, I would think?
Yeah, you'd think. Of course, yeah. Maybe it was just before her conversation with Chris. Who knows?
Yeah, I think maybe. Steele realizes that explains the key lime pie and the Niemeyers. Laura adds that if she told them that much, they probably could figure out where Mr. Gallen is this morning. Steele realizes that if Graykirk had a plan A, there must be a plan B. He says they aren't early and speeds up the RV. Outside the courthouse, we see a green car pull up. Gallen gets out. We see him walk towards the courthouse. And in the bushes, one of the henchmen stands there with Miss Haynes at gunpoint. She's in tears, saying, no one was supposed to get hurt. Sure, if you believe that, I've got some swampland in Florida for sale.
Yeah. You'll get a buyer.
Yeah. So the henchman calls her on her naivete and says that she can join him in the next world and maybe he'll marry her there. Ouch! The henchman's hidden below the belt?
Yeah.
Rude. Oh, some snarky henchmen.
Yes.
Okay, so the RV drives up as the henchman shoves Miss Haynes forward and she begins to walk towards Gallen. Laura notices the sniper on the roof. Steele references The Gauntlet with Clint Eastwood, which came out in 1977, fairly recent for this show.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's been a while since we've gotten a movie reference.
Yeah, and then we get 3 in this one.
Yeah. Laura tells the kids to get down, saying that they're going to the movies. Okay, I gotta ask you if this makes any sense, this scene, because it doesn't to me. We see Shelby call out to Mr. Gallen. He's about to go to her, saying it must be something important. The RV drives up in between Gallen and Shelby, but it looks like the sniper is firing across, not down.
Yeah.
And the police fire back, eventually hitting him, but like, I'm no expert, but shouldn't the sniper be firing down? And if so, would the RV make any difference?
Well, he's across the street, obviously, maybe a little bit farther than that. Probably not too much higher in elevation than the steps, because remember, those are the steps go up. It's an elevated courthouse, so the steps go up. So he does, I believe he does have a little bit of a downward angle, but not necessarily a lot, because he probably doesn't need it from where he's at. My problem is that, yeah, they drive the RV up, they run across the sidewalk, they stop the RV in front of Gallen and the courthouse steps, between the sniper and Gallen and his escort. And then the sniper starts shooting. What's he trying to do?
Yeah.
Shoot through the windows of the van to get to the other side? Because the van's blocking his view. He actually can't see Gallen to shoot at him. And if you can't see him to shoot at him, you can't hit him with a bullet.
Yeah, that was my question as to whether it would actually block him. But either way, like, you're right. It seems silly to start shooting if you can't see your target. Like,
yes,
you're not a very good sniper in that case.
No.
You're a stormtrooper, actually.
Watch your head.
We see Shelby. Yeah. After testifying, Gallen, we get the scene change. Gallen's leaving the courthouse to a rather meager press conference, considering how influential this corporation supposedly is. You'd think there'd be a few more reporters there, but they ask what this means for Graykirk and how he feels. Gallen replies he feels 20 years lighter and not to invest in their stock. Laura, Steele, and the kids exit the building here as well. Chris says to Laura, now that we're going to be living in Los Angeles, do you think we could take in a movie, hit a couple of clubs? Laura agrees to the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, this is the point where you say, I'm sorry, Chris, but I really don't think that would be appropriate.
Yeah.
Like, talk to this poor kid. Like,
yeah, don't keep. She's stringing him on. She's being a tease, basically, in a sense.
Don't make me sympathize with the Weinstein wannabe. Like, that's not where we should be at this point.
No.
I should not be. And then it gets worse.
Yes.
A fan on the Facebook page, or maybe it was you, that I had said something and I had forgotten about this exchange, completely forgotten that this happened in this episode. Angel tugs on Steele's arm and says, "You saved my daddy's life, didn't you?" He picks her up and says, "What if we did?" I always thought she kissed him on the cheek. But then I watched it again.
What do you think that she did?
Like, okay, so at first I thought she kissed him on the cheek. Like, I'd always thought she kissed him on the cheek. But then I was watching and I remembered, I think it was you that actually said, like, this ending part was disturbing. And so I watched it a little closer. It looks like she leans forward and whispers something in his ear.
And that's what it looks like to me. Yeah.
Yeah. And then he says, "Are you sure you're only 9?
Now, the script says that Angel leans forward and kisses him, and then she prolongs the kiss, and Steele's eyes widen. And yeah, but I mean, they're
okay, both are bad. Both are bad.
I mean, you know, and especially considering some of the allegations that have come out from people like Corey Feldman.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like, you know, I think somebody's telegraphing something here that they really
creepy.
didn't. I think somebody's telegraphing something that they didn't really realize that they were telegraphing, because it is like, it is wrong.
It's meant to be a funny joke, like, haha, she said something inappropriate. But then when you further ask yourself, well, what could she have possibly said that was inappropriate enough for him to ask, "Are you sure you're only 9?
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of options there.
No, there isn't. And it's one of those things where,
even if it's just, as the script says, a kiss and then a prolonged kiss, I mean, there's still
it's one of those things where I've heard, like, people say that in order to shut down somebody making a sexist or racist statement, the best way to do that, if somebody makes an inappropriate joke, is to ask, well, why is it funny? And watch them explain, and then double down, and then eventually, you know, this is what this feels like. We're not supposed to ask why this is funny, because if we do, we have to tell ourselves, oh, it's funny because they're making a joke about a kid being, no, don't want to do it. Don't want to do it. Not funny. So, I don't love it. Because that's like the last bit we get before the freeze of the tag. So, so we've reached the end of our episode, and what an episode it was, folks.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, sorry. That's not the end of the tag. Laura ends by saying, "I hear you, Mr. Steele."
Yeah.
That's where we end.
Yes. Anyway. Yeah. I don't have anything else to add.
No. Well, you do.
Well,
you're singing for us. Or do we leave that till
until the episode is over?
We're prolonging this to the bitter end. Okay.
I'm trying to avoid it.
Well, you can't, because you told me about it. The funny thing is, I didn't see that bet. So if you'd never said a word to me, you could have gotten away with it.
I know, but I you know,
you're too honest for your own good.
Yes, I am. Which is why I have lost out on so many possible jobs. Anyway.
What are your weaknesses? Well, I don't show up on time, and sometimes I'm drunk on the job. And oh wait, you wanted my fake? Okay. On the website, www.SteeleWatching.com, we've got show notes. We've got links to Amazon US and Amazon Canada. We also have ways that you can support us. Thank you again to our 2 new subscribers. You guys are awesome. We love you. There's merch. You can find links to the merch. So any one of those things are ways to make us feel better about ourselves. There's also, I'm kidding. There's also social media resources and links such as
the official SteeleWatching Facebook page, the official Twitter, Instagram, X. I said Twitter. I guess it's
Yeah, I
actually
know
X.
we keep calling it Twitter. It's X, but I refuse. So I'm just going to keep saying Twitter.
Anyway,
sorry,
so
Elon, you
all
can
of
come
that,
for me.
yes, and then also a link to the unofficial group that we participate in that has been so much trouble for me lately, the SteeleWatchers fan group. I should know better. Anyway, yes, so that's all there.
And the next episode will be Steele Sweet on You, where we finally get to see Donald Piper, who is no longer a shoe salesman, but a dentist.
Yes.
Somehow. He made a career change in a year.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. Well, the moment we've all been waiting for now.
No. Now we say thank you and goodbye, and then it comes.
Oh, fine. Okay, right. Fine.
See you guys later. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, everybody out of the room. Get your earplugs in if you're going to stick around. All right.
Stick around.
Yes, here we go. I'm going to butcher Bing Crosby and embarrass myself in public.
He's dead. He can't do anything about it. It's fine.
Yeah, well, I still feel bad. Anyway, here we go. Tooraloo-ra-loo-ra, tooraloo-ra-lie. Sorry. Try that again. Tooraloo-ra-loo-ra, tooraloo-ra-lie, tooraloo-ra-loo-ra. Hush, now don't you cry. Tooraloo-ra-loo-ra, tooraloo-ra-lie, tooraloo-ra-loo-ra. That's an Irish lullaby. Now I've fulfilled my obligation. Never again.